In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide Podcast with Luke Boner. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
G'day and welcome to episode 92 of the Bonafide Podcast, or the All-Star Podcast. A little bit later, we'll talk to Shane Adam-Basset, our Hollywood contact, right on the tail end of the Oscars, the winners, the losers, who still has a career ahead of them, who's completely blown it, the drama, and some tips on what to watch and possibly what not to watch. Jonathan Kearsley is Sky News Washington Bureau Chief. We'll have the latest on the Middle East and how it's affecting us here in Australia. James Ward, our motoring expert, on how to save money behind the wheel and the latest on dirty fuel. And we'll check in with Rod Hannafy on his way back from a long trip to Perth. And we'll talk about the availability of diesel in this country. God, I'd hate
And
to think how
Luke?
much... Yes,
Just before we move on, sorry, I just really cut you off then.
you did. It's very rude.
I know, I did. I know. It's because I can't see you today. We've had some tech
Glitches.
issues. It's been the bane of our existence, but I think we've sorted them out. How did you feel about the live stream last week?
I'm still in two thoughts about it. It had its ups and downs.
Yeah. Well, we've got to work through those glitches, and we are going to make that more frequent. So I think the next time we do it, we're actually going to Kangaroo Valley this week, so we'll probably pick it up again next week. We'll do it at 7 a.m. I think next time, when people are, getting up for their breakfast and whatnot. We'll see if that time works for people. But if you have any suggestions as to timing, platform, things you want to see on the live stream, let us know, because we are going to start doing that more often.
Yeah, okay. So I look forward to that. So people can ring in. They can be part of it.
Yes, absolutely. And you can also be part of it with the live comments that come through. So it's kind of like a text line, Luke.
Just something interesting, Kelsey, and I tend to disagree with this. Well-respected journalist with The Australian and the Sunday Telegraph is Claire Harvey. Now, I'd love to get her on the podcast one day. She is the daughter of the late, great Peter Harvey from Channel 9. Peter Harvey, Canberra. Do you remember him? Anyway,
Yeah.
she has her own podcast on The Australian. And she was talking about Kyle and Jackie and all sorts of media stories on her latest podcast. It's all very interesting. But she was talking about how a lot of media people are now going into podcasting because they have more freedom and they don't have to answer the bosses, don't have to answer to ACMA, and they can kind of run their own race. But she said that men tend to be drawn towards visual podcasts like YouTube, and she reckons women who are too busy cleaning, cooking, picking up kids tend to like audio only. Now, I disagree with that. A lot of men, like Jacob, who's a tradie, all his mates who are tradies have their headphones in and they listen to podcasts. I don't know if she's 100%. We should get her on and talk about it.
Look, I can see where she's coming from. I guess I don't know enough men that listen or watch podcasts to really know. Like, I don't have a good sample size there. So it seems a bit, I think maybe on like a majority level, she might have a point, but I don't know. I haven't seen the data behind it.
It was only her opinion. It was only her opinion. And, yeah.
You can get streaming data though, like YouTube and stuff has analytics on who watches when.
But she's a very interesting woman and a wonderful journalist. I'd like to get her on as a special guest. I'll tell you who's got back to me who wants to come on the podcast.
Who?
Mark Geyer sent me a message last night. He would love to come on our, what he calls our poddy, and we've just got to organise a time next week, okay?
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to talking to Big MG.
MG?
MG. And someone else that we've got coming up in the next podcast is Corinne Hofstrand, the ketamine queen. We've had her on a couple of times. Well, she had a very interesting career as a dominatrix in a brothel. And the stories are unbelievable. So we're going to get Corinne Hofstrand back on very, very soon. So I'm really looking forward to that.
You've become quite good friends with her now, haven't you?
Yeah, we get on well. I like her. She's what I call a really interesting onion. Like Bill Edgar. He's an interesting onion. In fact, a lot of our guests are interesting onions. You just keep unpeeling these fascinating layers. And that's the beauty of the podcast. We get to spend time with people and hear their stories. And you haven't got just 8 minutes like you would on commercial radio.
Well, I think also, we're kind of going off script here, but I think some of the guests that, are regular contributors that have followed you from Triple M onto the podcast, what I've noticed is that I feel like we've got to know them a lot more because we've got more time with them, Like you were always good mates with like Shane Oliver and James Ward and stuff, but I feel like having more time to speak to them, it's like we get to know them so much better than we used to. So I like that.
We'll have Shane Oliver on very soon, chief economist with AMP. Did you know that nearly 700 businesses just in New South Wales have closed down since January? And we're only up to March. And the Small Business Association is saying the cost of living, the cost of electricity, wages, it's all adding up. And they are going to approach the government because they want, with the crisis in the Middle East, they want COVID workplace situations put back in place, not just encouraging, telling people to work from home, introducing JobKeeper, and it's very, very interesting. So we'll have a talk about that and the economy and the crisis in the Middle East with Shane Oliver and how it's going to affect us. Also, with Shane Oliver coming up soon, a lot of Australians are looking at their super and saying, should I just leave it where it is or should I convert it all to cash? Or what should I do? Do I leave my super alone and leave it in the capable hands of those managing it, or should I be more proactive with what I do with my super? It's a question that a lot of Australians are asking themselves, particularly people who are approaching retirement, and we'll have some advice along those lines as well.
My motto is, because we have our super, and to be honest, we've got barely nothing compared to you old folks, but we have like a financial firm or whatever, and they manage our funds for us, because I just think these people are incentivized to make the most of my money. I don't want to just leave my super sitting in an account doing nothing for me. So even if I have to pay a little bit, I think most of them work off they get 1% of whatever they earn in your super. And so I think that's an incentive. The more that they earn, the more that they get. So it's a win-win. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, you don't have as much super as I do, but you hopefully will by the time you reach my age. But just remember, had I had super, no, Kelsey, had I had compulsory superannuation, it's commonly known as superannuation guarantee, when I first started work in 1978, I'd be a lot better off. But as Prime Minister, Paul Keating introduced compulsory superannuation legislation. It mandated, Kelsey, that employers had to contribute to their employees' retirement funds. And it started at 3 to 4%, and it continued to rise over time. But that wasn't until 1992. 1992, because back in the day when you were young and you were just starting off in the workforce, you didn't think about superannuation. You thought you were bulletproof. So compulsory super hopefully has helped a lot of Australians. It was, I think, a very good idea of Paul Keating's back in 1992, but that's just my rant.
We love the news. Something to think about, something to laugh about.
Well, this is political again, but what about the win for the Labor Party in South Australia? We told you that this was going to happen. And look, the polls were 100%. Gee, they were right this time. But what's emerged is something unique here in Australia, and that is in South Australia. And just bear in mind, a state election is often based on state issues, but I think it is also a reflection on how the folks are feeling about the government in general.
Oh, yeah, especially recently, yeah.
So, the Labor Party, absolutely dominant again in South Australia, but the coalition, the Libs and the Nationals, have learnt a very sobering lesson. The Conservative opposition, clearly, in South Australia is now One Nation. One Nation. And some people are saying, One Nation is all about racism and bigotry accusations. Some people are saying it's a protest vote. They wouldn't really vote for One Nation. Well, they did in South Australia. Now, they've only got one seat at the moment, and Corey Bernardi, an ex-senator, has led the way in South Australia. But it is an interesting observation that now One Nation is really the conservative opposition in Australia, not the coalition, Kelsey.
Well, again, in South Australia, I don't know if I do think it's reflective of how the country's feeling at the moment. But, it's only one seat. Big win. Absolutely big win. I do think a lot of people are so upset with the coalition that they are voting One Nation now.
As a protest.
How long it will... Yeah, but how long that will last, if that will last for, the next election, I don't know,
Yeah.
So...
Well, they've got 2 years to go federally. Yeah. But just remember, Kelsey, we have the seat of Farrer, which was Susan Lee's seat near Albury. That by-election is coming up, and there is another election coming up in Queensland next year. So these little political barometers continue to feed speculation. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the seat of Farrer when Susan Lee's ex-seat goes to the polls. Tell me this story, the Olympic cyclist who ran over his wife. What's happened here?
Oh, so I'm not sure if you remember this, Luke, but it was in 2023, Rowan Dennis, who is an ex-Olympic cyclist. His wife was killed in their driveway. He ran her over. He was found not criminally responsible for his wife's death, but he had disregarded her safety after he continued to drive while she clung onto the vehicle. Now, that happened in 2023.
It was an accident.
Well, yeah, it's gone through the court cycle, and Rowan has been keeping a low profile since, as you would, but he's come back into the public spotlight in probably one of the most distasteful Instagram posts I have seen. Right?
What did he post?
He posted a photo of his newly cleaned Porsche with the caption, "An absolute weapon."
Oh no, that's bad. No,
that is bad.
That is really bad. He didn't think there. He was not found to be not criminally responsible for his wife's death. But jeepers creepers, you don't. This is the car he killed her in?
No, it's not the car that he killed her in. However, it is crazy to me that the first post he made after being dead silent on social media because of this is a photo of a car with the caption, "An absolute weapon."
Yeah, that's
and
bad.
then he followed it up with a photo of his kids saying, "2 absolute weapons." I think doubling down, trying to say that that's a completely fine way to describe a car. But I just think that has got to be the most distasteful comeback I have ever seen. That has got to, I don't know, Lou. It just made me think, what is going on? You've got no common sense if that's your reaction.
No, that's a very, very bad response. I'm with you on that one. You remember I told you a few podcasts ago, if you look at the headlines, if somebody that goes to a private school does something wrong, the headline is always "Private schoolboy caught doing such and such." And you hadn't noticed it before, but you're noticing it now,
Yes.
correct?
Now we do, yes. Now it's everywhere.
Here's the headline on Daily Mail. Private school mums, Natasha Jensen's jaw-dropping reason for blowing 6 times the limit and flipping her Mercedes. What's the headline? She's the mum of a private school mum. So what's happened here? She was caught drink driving and she blamed it was a sky-high breathalyzer reading, on a health supplement. And then her latest defence strategy for a second set of serious charges is that she suffers from a medical problem called gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, GERD. In fact, there was a case of this in Doc Martin.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's a thing. Some people, a very small amount of people, but it's a thing. People have it. What happens, Luke, is you eat something and because of this, I don't know, anomaly in your body starts to ferment whatever food you put into it and you naturally get drunk.
You get pissed.
Of any carbs that you drink, you'll get any carbs that you eat will turn into alcohol in you, which is I feel like it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
It's like you're a walking, talking brewery.
Yeah, literally.
Literally.
It's a thing,
Well,
but whether or not she's got
anyway.
it is another question.
Well, anyway, it's a second offence. She's disputing the roadside reading of 0.304. Just remember, 50 cents is your limit. She was $3.04, okay?
Oh, wow.
And then she flipped her, and then it says, luxury car on leafy lower North Shore. You see how they write these things?
I know.
I know, private school mum.
Crazy.
But there is a shock postscript to this story today.
Oh, gosh.
And the headline is, I'm not joking, private school mum bombshell.
Oh, God.
She had an
Why?
AVO taken out against her because she was up for an assault charge last year.
Oh, my gosh. Oh,
But
do
it
we
was-
care that she's the mum of private school kids?
No,
Does that
but that's the
matter?
headline. That's the
Oh,
headline.
It's so silly. Does it make it more exciting, do you think? Like, knowing that her kid to go to a private school, does that make it more enticing to you, Luke?
No, but obviously, and all the papers do it. All the papers do it. Private school student on sexual harassment charge, or private school boy caught with drugs. Private school mum now makes a headline. And
so
it's
dumb.
I told you about this, but now you see it everywhere, don't you? Because it's always been there.
Yes. Yeah. It's very silly. Very silly. Now, Luke, I put another story in here, which I've got no idea if you're up with. It's taking the internet by storm.
Is this
I feel
Afro
like
Man?
I feel like
No.
I should have a new segment called "What Young Kids Are Talking About on the Internet." But yes, Afro
No,
Man.
I reckon
What do you-
we could call the segment Kelsey's Kidding.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. I can get
See?
behind that.
It's got alliteration.
I'm an ideas man. Yeah.
Have I told you that? Yeah, what's this Afro Man? What's happened?
Do you know Afro Man? Have you ever heard of him
Nah.
before?
That used to be any member of the Harlem Globetrotters, except for Curly, who was bald.
No, I don't understand that reference. But when I was growing up, the song that we all, as 15-year-olds thought was the coolest thing ever was this song called Because I Got High.
I was gonna clean my room until I got high.
It's like a cult classic of my generation, this song. And he's just known for making funny tunes, right? Recently, it wasn't recently actually, it was in 2022, Afro Man's house was raided and the search warrant was listed for like narcotics and kidnapping. Anyway, the Adams County Sheriff raided his home, stole money. They turned off the security cameras in his house, but they forgot to turn off all of the security cameras, right? So the search, they came back with nothing. So whatever tip they got was wrong. Afro Man, being an artist, he felt like he wasn't treated fairly. He didn't get all his money back. His house was trashed. He takes the footage and he writes a whole bunch of songs, right? Mocking this whole situation. One of the songs is called Lemon Pound Cake. The Adams County Sheriffs then sued Afro Man for defamation. And all of this was in court recently. And I've got to say, it was probably one of the most ridiculous trials. Anyway, Afro Man won, Luke, but I wanted to show you one of the songs that's kind of taken
Yeah, go on.
the internet by storm. It's called Lemon Pound Cake.
Yeah.
The best thing that I've ever listened to in a long time. Let me share my screen.
The Adams County Sheriff kicked down my door. Then I heard the glass break. They found no kidnapping victims, just some lemon pound cake. Mama's lemon pound cake.
So, look, you can see that it's like, it's stupid, it's funny. He's referencing Lemon Pound Cake because in the security footage that he got, one of the officers there going around the kitchen with a gun, and he does a double take on a lemon pound cake sitting on the bench. And as a result of this one particular officer has had hundreds of lemon pound cakes sent to his house. So it's all very funny, but it raises a good question about freedom of speech, and that's what Afro Man's defense was he has freedom of speech and he exercised his right to have freedom of speech. The Adams County Sheriff have done, Luke, what they say about you try and sue somebody over something that you don't want out in the public, you actually make it more public.
Or there's a thing called the Barbara Streisand
That's it.
effect, where there were journalists that took photos of her house and she was outraged and tried to sue them. So because it made news, the photos of her house went international and went berserk. And she actually raised more attention to her house than the original photos, which just would have gone off into nothingness. And it's called the Barbara Streisand syndrome.
Yep, that is exactly what's happened here. This one particular song had about 150,000 views on it before the trial started. Now it's got 3 million.
Under the Boardwalk, Kelsey, The Drifters, big hit in 1964. I want to know if the songwriters, who happen to be Kenny Young and Arthur Resnick, are they getting any coin out of Afro Man?
I would think so.
Bette Midler had a big hit with it, and so too did the Rolling Stones, and probably a lot of other people. But it was a Drifters song written by these two songwriters, Kenny Young and Arthur Resnick.
Yeah. I'm
they
sure
deserve
they
some royalties on all of this.
He wouldn't have been allowed to publish this song if it wasn't done properly, right? It would have been taken down.
Under the Boardwalk.
If anybody wants to go into a black hole on TikTok, just look up all the Afro Man stuff. It's so good. Some of the questioning on the stand was just chef's kiss, beautiful entertainment. I'll play a little bit now.
What they did, searching your house, gave you the right to do everything you
Under the circumstance that I got freedom of speech, after they run around my house with guns and kick down my door, I got the right to kick a can in my backyard, use my freedom of speech, turn my bad times into a good time. Yes, I do. And I think I'm a sport for doing so, because I don't go to their house, kick down their doors, flip them off on their surveillance cameras, then try to play the victim and sue them.
Hey, listen, let's go into the mailbox. And we're going to talk to Rod Hannafy soon about the price of diesel. You've got some feedback here.
Yes, so on our live show, we were speaking to Rod and we got an update on the fuel situation. I posted a clip of that on the Facebook page, and this is what some of you guys said. So Craig said, is it time to have the trucks strike and make the federal government take action? They don't care unless it hurts the city. Is a strike or something the next step? What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, well, there has been talk about that and giving the truck drivers or the truck industry some relief. There's also some talk about giving everyone relief with reducing the fuel excise from 51 cents to down where Scott Morrison had it during COVID to 22 cents. Is it about time the government said everyone who, if we are serious about encouraging people to work from home and not drive to work, should there be some sort of tax relief? I don't know.
Aaron said, our work went to a job with our fleet of heavy vehicles and the fuel bill for the one job came in around the $9,000 mark at the time of quoting/winning the job. Cost for fuel would have been about $3,500. Essentially saying he doesn't understand how people can sustain being over budget like that, because kind of like what Rod talks about in today's episode, companies often bid for a job at a certain price. Those contracts don't change. So even though the fuel prices have gone up, the contracts stay the same. So it's the trucking companies that are out because of the fuel prices.
Well, that's what I said. And the building industry. I mean, if a builder says the cost of us building your new home is this, next thing you know, the cost of everything goes up. Is the builder stuck with that quote? And that's just one example. It's absolutely horrific. I tell you, I'm going to talk about this with Shane Oliver, but the government this morning was saying, we have 35 days of fuel in Australia, and when pushed on this, they admitted, no, we don't have 35 days of fuel in Australia. The 35 days also accounts for fuel that is somewhere on a ship, hopefully going to arrive in Australia. So the IEA recommends 90 days. We've never, ever got along with that. We've always had between 30 and 35. So just how much fuel we do have here on this continent, no one knows.
Just one last one. Tony is saying that they're essentially paying $500 extra per day per truck compared to about 6 weeks ago. So that's a lot of money in a week. Luke, we got another email here from Bradley. He says, hi, Luke and Kelsey. I know everyone is getting tired of the Kyle and Jackie O talk, but Luke, you might be interested in this. I was listening to the Game Changers radio podcast and it's worth a listen. They played an excerpt from the audio version of Jackie O's book about when ARN presented them the offer and its unbelievable effort they went to. Flowers, sky sign writing, Louis Vuitton suitcases. What's also unbelievable is SCA were willing to make similar offers to get them back. So it is a big backflip that the company is doing with Carl and Jackie O.
Yeah, because they can see what's
happened.
happened. The act is getting old. And the whole reason you pay a radio presenter, especially one with an opinion, is that they rate and attract advertisers. But if you're repelling advertisers and your wages are just astronomical, you'll want to get rid of them.
Yeah, definitely.
Coming up on episode 92 of the Bonafide podcast, Jonathan Kearsley from Washington. Well, while there's so much going on in the world, what the world really wants is for the conflict in the Middle East to be over. And it's been going on for many, many years. This isn't new. And we were talking earlier on the podcast. We had massive oil problems throughout the world back in 1973, 74, 79. And I guess the world should have seen this coming. But how much longer can this drag on? I get the feeling that Donald Trump is rapidly losing support, and obviously not just from the Democrats, from within his own party. Has he bitten off more than he can chew? Jonathan Kearsley is Sky News bureau chief in Washington. He's there right now. Jonathan, thanks again for keeping us in touch.
Always good to talk to you and your listeners.
Well, how long can this go on? And again, I'll ask, has Donald Trump bitten off more than he can chew?
Well, the pressure's mounting. We're less than 3 weeks into this conflict. The conflict, he said, could go between 4 to 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. But there is domestic pressure mounting politically and economically against the president. We've already seen his top counter-terrorism official, Joe Kent, resign over the war in Iran. Joe Kent was a Donald Trump loyalist who supported him through 2016, 2020, 2024 presidential elections, but resigned this week saying that in his good conscience he could not support the president, that in his view there was no imminent threat from Iran to the United States of America. That is something the White House pushed back furiously on, and the president himself to a certain extent too, saying that the threat was Iran had the capability to develop a nuclear weapon. Now, it's been interesting to hear the director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, put in the hot seat before a Senate Intelligence Committee and ask these same questions. And she was somebody who in Trump administration 1.0 pushed back against the idea of presidents unilaterally declaring or moving acts of war on their own decision in an act of what was viewed as self-defense. She co-sponsored a bill to try and essentially reduce presidential powers. Today, as I spoke to you, she was in the hot seat of a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing and dodged questions over whether Iran posed an imminent threat. She said that the capability of ballistic missiles had not intensified, had not grown. She said that the regime had been degraded but was largely still intact. I mean, a lot of this stuff undercuts exactly what her boss, the President of the United States of America, has been saying. And remember, too, that President Trump also said a matter of a few days ago that he had not been warned, as far as he was aware, of Iran's ability or capability to strike beyond its own borders into other Gulf states. Now, Iran has said this for years, that it could potentially do that, and intelligence has pointed to exactly that risk. Again, Tulsi Gabbard asked today, seemed to suggest that she did not know what President Trump had said or not. I mean, there's serious questions going to be hanging over her political future, but as this conflict drags on and Americans feel the price, the pain of price of petrol or gas, as they call it here, well, that is only going to intensify. We've heard the chair of the Federal Reserve talk about inflationary pressures, economic pressures as a result of not only the president's tariff policies, but now this conflict too. So, look, you are seeing the pressure slowly building on the president, and he would be looking at this, trying to find an exit ramp, trying to find a way out. The question for him is, what is going to be his justification for getting out, having gone in? Because remember, this was a conflict that we started talking about humanitarian crises and regime change, and then it went to reducing the threat of nuclear weapons and reducing ballistic missile stockpiles. The idea of regime change seems a long shot now, particularly given as you have the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, even though we haven't seen him or actually heard his voice, put in his place as Iran's new supreme leader. Are you looking at a situation now where the regime is actually more hardline and more intense than perhaps it was just a matter of a few weeks ago?
Jonathan, NATO has collectively said we can't help you. And Donald Trump at first really pissed off at all of that because he doesn't enjoy being told no. But now he's saying, I don't need you. Why did NATO say no?
Well, NATO doesn't want to enter into a broader conflict. Go back to the start of this, and Britain's Prime Minister was essentially wielding legal advice that, in his view, the action taken by the United States and Israel was illegal. France didn't want to enter into this fray either, then eventually did by sending in an aircraft carrier. Britain sent in assets to look after its assets in Cyprus. Now, NATO nations are talking about how to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, talking amongst themselves, but they have not come to the request of the President of the United States, who made the request on social media saying that they should basically bring in their Navy vessels to help escort oil tankers, ships out of the Strait of Hormuz and get oil moving around the world again, because this is fast becoming a conflict about energy. It's fast becoming a conflict about oil and gas. We've seen Israel strike Iran's gas fields. We've seen Iran retaliate with strikes on the largest liquefied natural gas export facility anywhere in the world in Qatar. At Ras Laffan. So this is a conflict that is entering a new phase. But on the question of NATO, well, NATO nations have made it clear they don't want to get involved in a broader conflict. Clearly, they're looking back to issues around Afghanistan and Iraq and wars that lasted years there, concerned about the repercussions and the questions that could come if they enter this conflict. But make no mistake, they are talking about how to deal with the issue of the Strait of Hormuz. And the questions that they are asking is how together can they work to try and reopen this strait. So it is going to be critical. If that strait can be reopened, well, then it may well be that's going to be a significant move that is fortuitous for the Western world. But right now, you're looking at a situation that shows little sign of ending. Yeah, and it's in the world, most of the world's interest for the Strait of Hormuz to be reopened. But Trump delivered what can only be called a blistering attack on NATO nations. He also gave Australia a serve. How do you think this is going to affect diplomatically our relationship with the US? Well, look, I think it's interesting. You mentioned this idea of Australia, and Australia was mentioned alongside Japan and South Korea in a fired-up post about NATO and NATO's unwillingness to help. Japan and South Korea had been pressured to provide naval vessels. Australia had not been formally asked to provide Navy support. Now, I've been speaking with officials at the White House, the Pentagon, and within the Australian government about exactly this issue. What was the president pointing to? What was he alluding to? We know there was a request formally from the United States early on in the conflict for military assistance to Australia, but haven't been able to get a clear answer yet on exactly what that request was. Was it rejected? Is that what got under the president's skin as to why he singled out Australia in this message? But the Australian government made it clear they haven't been asked for Navy vessels. They have had a request early on, but no Navy vessels to try and help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And yes, it is going to be critical. Iran has said for a very long time, if there was a conflict, well, it would threaten to close the Strait of Hormuz. And that's what it's doing by, according to the US administration, essentially firing on ships that shouldn't be there. So it is a very tense and a very, very delicate situation. But this is an area that controls a huge amount of the world's oil supply. So with it being closed, well, that just puts pressure on other economies. It means your inflation is likely to go up. It means your price of petrol is obviously going to go up. And Australia is seeing that already, like we are here in the United States. But it's a major global pressure point. And right now, with it being shut, Iran is maintaining that element of resilience, if you like. They might be using as many ballistic missiles as they can to go into Gulf states, but it is the Strait of Hormuz, and that is going to be critical. It is going to be economic matters that matter in this conflict ultimately if it is going to come to an end.
Has there been talk of petrol rationing in the United States?
Well, it's interesting you raise this idea. I know you wind the clock back to the 1970s. I think it was the last time Australia was dealing with petrol rationing.
1979. 1979.
Exactly.
We had odds and evens.
The global oil supply.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at this concept now. If you start getting to a stage where you have to tell your people to ration the amount of gas they can get or petrol that they can get, then you have a serious domestic problem. Now, I know in Australia there's been fuel supply problems, and there has been fuel supply problems for years. Australia has basically not had enough reserve in the tanks in order to try and deal with supply if there is indeed a crisis. Now, the United States is in a little bit different position. It has the supply, but still prices are rising here. But if you start telling a portion of the 330 million people who live in this country, you have to ration when you can fill up, well, that could grind significant sectors to a halt, a country that relies on transport. And the last thing I think the president would be wanting to do is to tell people to ration supplies, because then he's just added himself another problem that he doesn't need to add, that he doesn't want to add to himself. So I think the idea of fuel rations here in the United States, well, that's unlikely to travel far because of the political pressure that would ultimately come on the president.
Jonathan, you would have heard by now that fuel theft in Australia is on the rise. But South Australia, about 70%. It's unbelievable. And it's not the first time we've seen this. And today, Jonathan, the South Australia Police Commissioner has said to the fuel retailers, look, it's the police haven't got the manpower to stop investigating petrol drive-offs. It's up to the service stations to implement prepaid pumps. Do you have that in America?
Well, in America, largely your system is you've got to pump your card in before you can get any petrol out of the system.
There you are.
So and they've had this for a very long time. I'll go to what they call a gas station or a service station here in the United States. I put in my card, I punch in the PIN number, I pull the card out and select what fuel I want.
Yeah.
Now, the fuel won't open unless that process takes place.
Right.
Or unless somebody goes inside to the cashier to pay a minimum or a maximum amount that can go into that certain Bowser. So it's almost like a prepay system, if you like. You need to prove that you can pay for what you've got before you can go on and fill up. So you're not going to see drive-offs here because it's nigh on impossible to actually get the petrol out of the Bowser before you can actually drive off without actually putting the card in. So that's the way the system operates here. It's operated for a very long time around that front, and it works well. I mean, Australia's been a long way behind the eight ball when it comes to this system. It's not a difficult system to put in place. It just requires the retailers to put card machines into the Bowsers. But what historically the pushback on that has been is people then aren't going to go into the service station and stock up on the stuff that the service stations want them to buy. So you've got an almost a catch-22 here. The service stations want the extra bucks, but at the same time they're having petrol drive-offs. Well, the simple solution is put your card machines in the Bowsers, make people pay for the gas before they drive off, then you won't be losing money on that front.
You've hit the nail on the head. The proprietors of the service stations, they don't make much money out of petrol. They want you to go in and buy a newspaper, a litre of milk, a traveller pie, and a bottle of coconut news. Yeah, that's where they make their markup. They don't make much money selling petrol. And if you put your card in and only buy petrol, that's going to put a lot of hardship on those proprietors, isn't it?
Well, precisely. I mean, the thing is that not many places in Western democracies, Western countries, make money out of just selling petrol. As you say, it's going into the store and buying whatever it may be. Is it somebody going in to buy, a pack of smokes and milk and supplies and think, I can stock up on this and take it all home? I mean, we have major stations here in the United States where you can pull into, there could be 20 to 25 petrol pumps at a single service station here, and they become major refueling stops. But at the same time, the proprietors quite some time ago started putting in this system of put your card in the machine before you can fill up. People are still going to go in and buy what they want if they feel as though they, want to grab a cup of coffee and then get a whole bunch of other stuff. But if you're wanting to avoid petrol drive-offs, well, the easiest thing is move with the 21st century. Stick the card machines into the Bowsers and stop the drive-offs.
It's a sad world, isn't it? Just very quickly, the largest consumer of oil is China. And they have been bracing for a long time. They saw this coming. But this disruption because of the Iran war is putting that preparation and China's resilience really to the test. What's China doing?
China's still able to get oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. It's as simple as that.
How?
There have been tankers allowed out by Iran is letting tankers bound for China out of the Strait of Hormuz. It is letting tankers bound for India out of the Strait of Hormuz. We have seen this in recent days, that there have been suppliers getting into China. China is getting what it needs through this area. So you look at that situation and question, okay, well, China is clearly doing something with the Iranian regime to allow that, to push that out there. So the questions that you'd be asking, government's intelligence agency be asking is, what's China giving Iran? Because it's getting fuel. It's getting the fuel that for many other countries is largely locked up and ships are stuck in there and they can't get in and they can't get out. And what you're going to see is that if this continues long, well, look at the price of oil now, well over $100 a barrel as I speak to you after those Israeli strikes on the Iranian gas fields and the retaliation we've seen from Iran. But if this price gets much higher, well, you're going to see significant short-term pain, not just for motorists in Western countries around the world, but you are going to see significant problems to nations' economies. Now, what is that going to mean? Well, that's going to mean inflation. And what's that going to mean? Your prices go up. Everything is impacted by the movement and flow of energy and oil in particular. Without the supply needed in countries around the world, then there are going to be significant impacts on global economies. That's why this conflict is significant, because what started out as a humanitarian mission and about regime change is fast becoming now about energy supply and energy resilience. This is a war of energy.
Jonathan Kearsley, always great, always informative and educational. Thank you so much. I know you're very busy. We'll see you on Sky News tonight and every day. And we'll talk again very soon if I'm not putting you out.
Let's talk again soon, Luke. But yes, absolutely. Always tune in to Sky News Australia. We'll have the latest on this unfolding situation in the Middle East from dawn right through until the evening. Stay tuned for the latest on the crisis in the Middle East.
But they're the kind that chase away the gloom. Tapping my feet, smiling wide, happy blues, ride with me tonight.
Time to go motoring with James Ward, Content Director with drive.com.au for our regular chat. And boy, have we got stuff to talk about today. James, a lot has happened since this international oil crisis. How long the hostilities continue in the Middle East is anyone's guess. It's not the first time we've had an international oil crisis. We had it in 73, 74 with the Arab oil embargo. And then again with the Iraq-Iran war in 79, we saw petrol rationing then. So it's funny, isn't it? You know, the government has now announced that they'll release high sulfur petrol to try and alleviate this. They've got to look after diesel because we run on diesel in Australia, so they've got to look after that. And now they're talking about rationing. We've got petrol theft reaching an all-time high, particularly in South Australia. In America, at most servos now, you've got to type in how many litres of fuel you want, then tap your credit card before the browser goes on. And I wonder, James, how far are we away from that to avoid this theft?
Yeah, they've done that for a while, but yeah, look, it is. It's the Mad Max plot.
Isn't it?
Come to life. Look, it's honestly, it's pretty dire. And look, I think Australia is a bit annoyed about this because we didn't start this. We didn't sort of initiate things here, and it really has thrown a huge spanner in the works. Again, I like sort of referring to this. You've had a few bits of narrative where you've got, whether they're owners or whether they're advocacy groups, going, electric vehicle owners are basically being smug, saying, it doesn't affect us. It affects every single person in Australia because you hit the nail on the head. We run on trucking. We run on all of our logistics is diesel-powered trucks, for whether it's up and down between Melbourne and Sydney, or whether it's going into regional areas, or whether it's bringing produce from regional areas into cities. We are predominantly a trucking nation. And so when diesel becomes very expensive or scarce, it impacts that supply chain in a massive way.
And so the price of everything goes up.
Everything goes up. So, okay, it might cost a bit more to fill up the RAV. It might be hard to find a tank of petrol for your Ranger around town. But the massive onset for this is the stress that it's going to put on our supply chains. The release of the high sulfur fuel, again, it's not a silver bullet, right? Like we only had, so basically in December last year, the government put in the Clean Fuel Act that they'd been working on for about 18 months. So for the most part, cleaner, low sulfur fuels. And let's be clear, it is clean for the environment. It's not like it's got dirt and rocks and sand in it. It's a low sulfur for emissions. So it's cleaner for the environment. We only enacted that clean fuel cutoff in December. So what this is they've basically relaxed that back to the standards we had last year. So it's not a big change, but what it means is there was a law that said that we can't sell high sulfur petrol. So they've just relaxed that law to release the high sulfur petrol that we had in storage that we were going to send offshore and sell offshore to countries that didn't have the same clean fuel limits that Australia had. That's all it is. It's not a big deal. But that's not exactly a bottomless supply, right? Like it is not a thing that we have tanks and tanks and tanks and tanks of where we can do things. So the idea we can solve this through a government kind of idea is, it's only a stopgap, if you will. But look, it helps in the short term, so it's a good thing. Although I'm not sure it has actually got to market at this point. The idea that we can do this, is helpful, but it is only a finite kind of thing. So the next steps is where to from here and where we will buy fuel from here. And we're seeing chatter in terms of other countries that have fuel reserves that we buy from them, and it'll just mean more cost and more expense. Yep. People. So look, it's a bit of an unknown and I don't see this ending quickly, right? I really don't. And it will be very interesting because the other problem here, and I know this is it's probably not a politically friendly one, but what this will do, because NATO and everyone else is like, America, you started this, you can deal with it.
And also the NATO nations are going, you'd like some support after you whacked all these tariffs on us and treated us like shit. And now you want NATO support on a war we didn't start.
Well, the other thing is, though, America will then control. So let's say this all works out, right? And there's it gets to a settlement and hostilities cease and the Strait of Hormuz is open again and oil refineries turn the lights back on and oil begins to flow. So we're back to normal in that kind of supply mindset. That will be controlled by the US.
Yeah.
And,
on their terms.
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure they're in it for the goodness of everybody, right? Like, I'm not really sure there's not going to be. And look, I'm not a political commentator, but part of me sees a future where America goes, we did this. We're the best people in the world. We stopped the terrible things. We did it without any of your help. We now control this oil. You can buy it from us with tariffs. And all of a sudden, yeah, okay, oil is moving, so supply stops, but I dare say those costs aren't going to go down because bloody the US of A is going to be clipping the ticket on the way through.
I was talking to Jonathan Kearsley, and listeners to my podcast can hear the whole conversation, but he said something really interesting. Jonathan Kearsley is Sky News' Washington, D.C. bureau chief.
Yep.
Ships that are getting through that have a deal, and we don't know what the deal is, we don't know what the cooperation is, but oil going to China and India, those ships are getting through. How? Why? Now, China is the biggest consumer of oil in the world, and they haven't got a problem. Iran is allowing oil on its way to China to get through, and also India. Isn't that interesting?
Well, they didn't start lobbing bloody tomahawks at them, did they? So, yeah, look, it's a very, very concerning political situation because there's people involved, right? Like, this is bad for people everywhere. And again, I'm not here for geopolitics. We can talk cars and fuel and things, but my little tea leaves here, the spidey sense of geopolitics is like this is not going to settle down quickly. We're not going to see a significant reduction in fuel prices. I dare say the supply chain will be the thing that we begin to solve, however we do that, whether it comes from other countries or whatever. But yeah, I think it's going to be cost because again, the US with their movement on Venezuela a couple of months ago, Venezuela is the largest oil reserves in the world. And that's now arguably got a bit of United States control on it. And then the Middle East with that oil distribution, if this all, hostilities stop, that'll then be controlled by the US. And as we have seen, the US like to slap taxes left, right, and center because they think they're the only people in the world. The rest of us feel the pain. It used to be the discussion when China catches a cold, the whole world sneezes. But I dare say when America picks a fight, the whole world bleeds. It'd be my way. You could copyright that. That could be the expression that we've got. But bloody hell, mate, it's not a lot of fun. So we did a story on 9 News last night where it was about where you can save, and we can't save money at the pump. Like, you can do the discount stacking. You can get the things where you get your shopper dockets and your NRMA membership and all that kind of stuff. So you can play a bit of a game there and save a bit, but that's a temporary kind of thing. Your fuel prices will go up and it's going to hurt no matter what. Where we've looked at is how you stretch your tank a little bit further. So if you've got an economy around sort of, 8 or 9 litres per 100, we can reduce that a bit. You drive in eco mode if your car has that. You just drive a little bit more gently. You take the bloody roof tent off the top. It does my head in that people drive around with those giant square roof tents on the top of their cars 12 months of the year and go, oh, but my fuel economy is terrible. It's like, mate, here's some really basic aerodynamic summaries for you. A giant rectangle on your roof is terrible for your car's aero profile and it will cost you more money in fuel. Pump up your tires. We see people driving around with tires at low pressure. That's greater rolling resistance, which means you use more petrol. Like it's just some simple stuff. Each one is a small percentage change that when stacked together can make a meaningful effort. And we did a test. You can save from driving aggressively, and I'll say that whether you use sport mode or whether you just gas it away from the lights, to driving gently, where you slow, you're a little bit more easy. You're not trying to beat the traffic like Grand Prix. You're easing on the throttle. You're coasting a bit more. You're sticking to speed limits and things. You're not being a nana in the left lane. But you can save up to 30% of fuel. So you can actually make a meaningful impact by just taking it easy. And of course, and I shouldn't, I should advocate that everybody gets behind the wheel as often as they can. But you know what? The shops, if the shops are, you're just going down for a litre of milk and you don't have the full family shop to go and get, just walk the dog, go down, get a milk, walk back, save the car from that initial startup and go. But yeah, far out, man. It's not a lot of fun.
And you know what?
It's a fundamental thing.
when you look at the service stations, most of them, the big ones are owned by the multinationals, but they're used kind of like a franchise for small owners, and the owners don't make much money out of petrol, hardly anything. It's buying the 1 litre of milk and a packet of chips or flowers on Mother's Day when you forgot on your way home, or a meat pie. They make money out of those small grocery items. They don't make much money out of petrol. So when people steal from the petrol stations, it's a double whammy banger for those small business owners. Even though they may seem like huge multinational oil companies, the owners are often franchises who... And if you pay for your petrol, prepay at the pump with like they do in America, you probably won't go inside to buy that litre of milk.
Buy in the stores, this is it. And look, again, if you're listening to this thinking, I'm going to do some cheeky drive-offs, they do have number plate scanners. And so what we see, and even like the other day, right, a couple of weeks ago, I was going through a drive-through to get, a McMuffin or something like that, and the guy in front of me was having a Barney with the fast food person and was just being a bit of a dickhead. And you could see the arm come out the window, tats down to the fingers and things. And I'm not profiling, but the number plate on the back of the car was crooked, was the thing. And I'm like, who drives around with a number plate that's crooked? What kind of self-respecting person does that? And I ran the plate through the Vic Roads and it was fake. Like, it was not the car that it was on. And so clearly stolen car, dodgy plates, the guy's being a douchebag, and it's like, classic Victoria, right? But we're going to see more of that. We're going to see people with clone plates, with fake plates, come to servos, fill up and drive off. They'll get the number plate from the cameras at the servo, which are there for they have number plate recognition. But if it's a fake plate to a fake car, they can't trace it, they can't lock it down. And even there was a story this week where a farmer who's got a diesel storage tank and tractors and things on his property, and again, agriculture needs diesel, right? Like it's a thing. Said people had drilled the bottom of his tanks and just stolen the petrol. So it's Mad Max style, right? They're not robbing from servos by filling up the Camry and then nicking off. They're literally stealing petrol from where regional industry is needing to store it. So we're going to end up needing security on petrol. Yeah. It's full. Like, mate, the humongous is probably going to be sitting there, ready to go, offering his services to be ruler of the wasteland now, because it's wild. And it's terrible for everybody. And this is the thing. If you're sitting there, you're thinking, I've got an EV, I don't care, or I'm not in regional Australia, it doesn't really affect me, or I just use 91, so the diesel prices and scarcity is not a problem. The supply chain, it affects everyone. And if we run out of diesel, we run out of fuel to run the tractors and fuel to run the trucks. And Australia stops at that point, right?
It does.
Like, grinds to a halt.
Yeah, I know. Because people who say, I can't now afford to drive into work every day. Well, during COVID, a lot of people worked out they could work from home.
I'm working from home today. It's not because, it's just a convenience thing for me today.
Yeah,
I've got something on.
But I've said this before. I'll say it to you. The Coles and the Woolies and the Aldis and the IGAs and the retailers, their shelves don't get stocked via Zoom.
That's it, right? Nobody picks the tomatoes on a Google chat, right? Like, and again, you look at our emergency services vehicles. The police in Victoria are fundamentally using diesel cars because they are efficient, right? Like, it makes sense. A Euro diesel, they use the 5 Series and X5s. They are a diesel powered car. They are efficient. If we run out of diesel, we run out of an actionable police force. We run out of the ability for a fire engine to get to your house because they are diesel-powered trucks. Look out on the road. Forget old mate who's gone and bought a bloody wild track to be the biggest guy in the car park. Look at the trucks. Look at the agriculture, tractors, headers,
builders,
combine.
The tradies. Mate, the price of everything will indeed go up. I know.
It's bad, right? Like, so that is the thing. And I don't want to sound like a doomsayer here, but the diesel constriction and diesel prices impact every single Australian, right? If you're sitting there patting the Tesla and going, good boy, we're okay, we don't have to worry about this. Yeah, you do. When you go to Coles, you will. And when you can't get lettuce, you will. And it's bad.
James, do you think now this is good news for the sale of EVs? Are Australians now going to rush out and buy an EV?
It's actually, okay, if you were in the market for an EV or you were considering one, now is actually a good time because you've got in-market offers, because electric vehicles are, we had, obviously, we've talked about this. It was a politicized message to say everybody must have an EV. And as we've said, if you live in town and you've got a charging solution and you're just whizzing around town, they are brilliant, right? It's quiet, it's smooth, and they are infinitely cheaper to run than a petrol car in cities. If you are in a regional area or you need to tow and carry and you need the utility of a vehicle that needs to do long range, they don't make sense. Because regional charging, it's getting better. The Tesla charging network in regional Australia is open now to majority of EV owners in the superchargers. But EVs are not efficient on long-distance, high-speed drives. And when you're doing that, you're charging it more. It's actually quite expensive to charge. You're better off in a diesel, assuming fuel's not a problem.
Or a hybrid.
But if you are in an urban area and you were considering an EV, we saw in February, our latest data, they're at about 11% of the market share. So that's the most it's ever been. If you factor in plug-in hybrids that allow you to have that full electric and drive, they've got a big battery as well, you got about 18% of new cars in February are there. So it's moving up. And what it means too is if you are in the market, there are a lot of these cars on sale because 11% and even up to 18% of the market is not, that's not at RAV4 or Ranger levels. They are not selling in volumes that brands would like. And so a lot of these brands have got vehicles that have come over here and are MY25, MY24 even, cars that are still on sale. Those things can be had at significant discount. So if you are in the market for an EV, shop around because there are some really good deals. Plus, if you can get a novated lease. So if you work for a big company and you can buy a car through salary sacrifice and get a novated lease, the government still has a fringe benefit tax exemption on full electric vehicles, which means you can save up to 30% over the life of the loan, which means you could be in a Tesla Model Y for the price of a Mazda CX-5, right? So it's actually really, really good for that side of things. So I'm not saying everybody should just rush out and buy one. You do need to consider your use of a vehicle and what you need. We know more people are moving to hybrids purely because the hybrid technology is filtering through to more and more cars. But now is actually a good time to buy, regardless of the petrol prices. There's a lot of EV deals on, and there's a lot of incentive to still get one. So, it's probably not a bad way to make hay while the sun shines, as they say. But energy costs are going up. You still need a charging solution. The infrastructure's not expanding at the rate of sales. So, if more people go and buy electric vehicles, there's going to be more time and more fight for those public chargers.
Yep. And a bigger drain on the grid, drain on the grid.
That's it. And I can assure you now, right, because the government is the government, if we put more EVs on the grid and there's more use of electricity, they're going to go, cool, let's ratchet up prices. And every time we talk about this, someone's going to call and they'll call you and they'll say, oh, but Luke, I've got solar and a battery, so it's free. Hey, that solar and that battery was not free, right? Like you put money in, you put 30 grand, 50 grand into doing that. And yeah, okay, that's capital cost on your home and that, has intrinsic value, but that's a big outlay to avoid paying for petrol. And not everyone can afford to do that. So, there's a lot of moving parts with moving to an EV. Again, they're brilliant around town. Make no mistake. I love it around town, but they don't suit everybody. So if you are considering and you are in the market, now's a good time. Plug-in hybrids make a great compromise. But, as for Australia, rush out, dump the Ranger, go get an MG4, you don't need to do that.
James, a double-barrel question. If we see a huge explosion in the sale of EVs, which will put an extra strain on the grid,
yep.
You've got then even fewer people paying the fuel excise.
Yep.
And the other part of that question is Scott Morrison during COVID reduced the fuel excise from 51 cents to 22.
Yep.
There's a lot of pressure on the government now to do likewise and reduce the fuel excise. Do you think they will? Do you think they should?
absolutely, right? Because do you want to know, and this is the thing, we look in our bubble of self, right? We go, it costs me more to fill up. I've got a little, my Peugeot's got the tiniest engine in the world, right? Like I think it's a 1.4 litre 3-cylinder. So it's not a very thirsty car to go and fill up, but I would like the fuel excise reduced to make it. But the biggest users of fuel, so the biggest taxpayers in excise are trucks, right? So Australia's logistics are paying that fuel excise more than everybody else combined. So lowering the fuel excise, it may seem like it helps, Barry with the petrol and his 5.6 litre V8 up the street. But what it really helps is our cost of living, because it reduces what trucking and logistics are paying more than anything else. I think it's a good thing, right? Like, because our petrol prices are high because of taxation in many ways. So reducing that excise would be good. The other thing that would be really good, and there's been chatter around to do this, particularly in the big cities, for the state governments to go, you know what? This is pretty tough at the moment. We know diesel supplies are not infinite. What we should do is make public transport free for a couple of months so that people who are, just 9-to-5 workers, you don't need to drive, right? You drive for convenience, you drive for comfort, but you don't need your car every day. You're not working on the road, you're not a delivery driver or whatever. You can, A, save your petrol use, B, you're not filling up as much, so you're allowing people who need the fuel to have easy access to the fuel. There's so much fare evasion on bloody transport anyway. Victoria doesn't even have a working ticketing system because it's an absolute nightmare, bucket of shit. So make public transport free for a couple of months to then enable people who are just commuting into the city and things like that go, well, you know what? If it's free, I'll do it. Because I'm sure if put on more services, make it free, and then more people will use that service so they're not using their cars. And A, it saves those people money, and B, it saves fuel supply for people who really need it. And I think that's the key.
James Ward is
politics, mate. I can come up with wild things all the time that are good. Do you know what? And actually, if while we're on this, I maintain that frontline workers, that if you are a nurse or a doctor or you are a paramedic and you're a frontline worker and you need to commute to work, whether it's a hospital or whatever, you should have free public transport already, right? Frontline workers should be able to get on the train or the tram or the bus, flash their ID card. You're a nurse, for Christ's sake. You should get priority seating on that bloody train, with armrests and massage. But by God, you should have free public transport already. I think that's the least the government could do. And that's not during time of crisis. That's forever, So there we go. We should run a political party, mate. We'd be really popular because I think we've got common sense behind us.
Just for Kelsey, that last rant has got to be our teaser on Facebook. That's fantastic. Hey, James, just changing the subject because I know you're going to go. The Bathurst 6 Hour is coming up at Easter, and I know that it attracts a massive grid, 70-plus production-based cars, over 13 different brands. Tell us about the Bathurst 6 Hour. I know that there are a number of classes.
Yep.
You've got A1, A2, B1 and B2, and then you've got C, D and E. Tell us about the BMWs and the Mercedes AMG A45s and the Focus RSs and the Mitsubishi Lancer EVs.
Mate, this is a return. This is the closest Australia gets to old school touring car racing. And look, if you are interested in motorsport at a competitive level, I'm not saying club level motorsport, but you're like, look, I can't afford to race, the AMG GT at the Bathurst 12 Hour like we saw a couple of weeks ago, but I've got a bit of money, as a hobby. I'd really like to get behind it. Let's assume fuel crises are over, because I tell you what, it's not a great use of fuel is motorsport.
No,
let's just put that one out there. And as much as that pains me, that's a reality. But the idea of getting into competitive motorsport in production level cars. So you've got, as you say, those various classes allow for things like previous generation BMW M135, so the 6-cylinder turbo beamers. You've got the A45, so that 4-cylinder turbocharged little Mercedes hatch. You've got V8 Commodores and Falcons. You've got things like the Kia Stinger. You've got all sorts of things. And remember, going back in the day of glorious touring car racing, you would see the Bathurst 1000 grid. Sure, you'd see Sierras and GTRs up the top with the Commodores, but you would see Corollas. You'd see all sorts of things. There was a Peugeot 405 MI16 that used to compete, and I love that. So the idea of the Bathurst 6 Hour, it is an endurance race. It's a team-based race. There are other 6 hours that run on a regularity trial, so it makes that available for club-level cars to compete at competitive level. But this is a stakes racing, competitive motorsport, class-driven, but it's a 6 hour endurance. You've got a lot of teamwork involved in this. You do compete in classes. It is fun to watch because these cars they're the cars we know. They're the cars that we may own. And it is something that does make motorsport a lot more accessible to a lot more people. So I love seeing this. And at Mount Panorama, it is, as we saw, it's such an amazing facility. And jogging around that bloody track, which was, probably not the smartest thing I've ever done for my knees. But by God, it's steep and it's sketchy, and what a thrill to race around there would be something to do. And again, Easter, right? We've all got time off. Once you've plowed your face with chocolate eggs, what a great way to go and enjoy the weekend.
Well, they used to enjoy the bike races at Easter. Now, I arrived in Bathurst from Young, September 1984, and the Easter bike races were over by then, I think, because of the huge riots at the top of the mount. Remember that? And they cancelled the Easter bike races, and a lot of people miss it. The locals hated it. But there it is. So now you've got the Bathurst 6 Hour at Easter. It's interesting, isn't it? I wonder how many of these motorsporting events will be cancelled because they'll just be seen to be a waste of precious fuel. And then somebody sent us a message, I think, on the podcast, might have been last podcast. How self-indulgent are ocean liners for passengers? Now, I did a bit of research because this could be an industry that'll shut down.
They run different fuels though, and this is
but listen to this, because we're talking about how precious diesel is. Your average ocean liner cruise ship consumes about 150 to 250 tons, 50,000 to over 80,000 gallons of fuel a day while they're underway.
Yeah.
Now, the Icon of the Seas consumes about 250 tons of fuel per day. Now, the fuel type, they use 3. I've just done a bit of research. Are you impressed?
I do. I love this. I'm learning.
Okay. Now,
I can be a cruise ship expert at a trivia night, and I can wow people with my knowledge. I love this.
Okay, well, here we go. The modern ocean-going passenger-carrying fuel liners carry usually 3 types of fuel. You listening to this?
Yeah.
It's referred to as diesel, but the large ships use what's called heavy fuel oil, HFO, and they use that when they're cruising. They switch to MDO, marine diesel oil, which is a bit cleaner, or marine gas oil, MGO, when they're closer to land or in restricted areas. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know that. But they use a hell of a lot of fuel, and when they come into Australia, they come into Circular Quay and fill up with diesel, and you've got the farmers struggling to get their headers and their tractors and their harvesters going. People are going, hang on, do we really need these luxury ocean liners taking all this fuel? Our farmers need it more. You can see where this is going.
No, look, it is one of those things that, and so, the crazy thing is, it's not like we're running out of oil. It's just that the supply is constricted, and they're blowing up refineries, right? Which is, I don't know. I don't get it, right? I don't get it. Just America, you're killing us here, and we will get to the point. And again, we can't legislate what Princess of the Sea does because it's probably, owned by a conglomerate group and it's flag based out of somewhere and whatever. But if we start running into real supply challenges, lifestyle and recreation will be the first things to be hit. And that's going to impact motorsport, and that's going to impact recreational boat use, whether that is a cruise ship or, a large thing, so that that heavy fuel oil can be used for fishing fleets and transport vessels and cargo ships and mining and things like that. And look, the most of shipping in Australia is industry based, right? So it's necessary. We don't have we have cruise ships come visit Australia, but we don't have a lot of them as flag carriers for Australia. They're not based here. You know, when you see the name of the port on the back of every boat where it's registered, not a lot of them. If any of them be here.
It registered, but flagged is the term you're using. And I'll tell you something. Nearly all the American luxury liners are flagged, registered in, you ready for this? Mm-hmm. Panama.
Oh, weird.
Bermuda and the Bahamas. And I'll tell you why. They have lower operating costs. They have fewer and more relaxed safety regulations and massive tax benefits compared to the US. And so those foreign registries include Carnival, Royal Caribbean, the Norwegian cruises. They are nearly all flagged or registered and owned in foreign countries like Panama, Bermuda, and the Bahamas.
It is fascinating. I've never been on a cruise ship, and this is the thing, right? I don't want listeners to be like, "Well, hang on a minute, I got a holiday. Don't yuck my yum, right? Don't blame me." This is not a slide on passengers who are doing these things, because again, we could look at, if we go down this rabbit hole, you look at air travel. You look at air travel that's not for business or for freight. It's for your holiday. So we don't want to. We're not at that point yet. The world has not run out of oil. It is just Australian supplies through our existing supply chains are constricted. So that means
lack of vision because we've only got 2 refineries.
No, that's right. Like we've created a problem here by going, oh no, let's go full green. We don't need fuel stores. We don't need our own refining capability. And now we're like, maybe we do. So, a lot of this is Australia's fault, right? That we didn't plan for the rainy day because I tell you what, it's raining. What it means is that the fuel supply negotiations are now in favour of the suppliers. So let's say we can get fuel out of somewhere in Southeast Asia, right? Well, whoever's got supplies up there, they'll go, no worries, Australia. We will sell you all the fuel that you need. Supply problems solved immediately with a stroke of the pen. However, they may go, but we're going to want this, or we're going to charge you that, or we're going to add things because they now have the control. So what that will mean, especially if there are taxes and higher costs, it's going to be passed on to us. So fuel prices, I imagine, are going to go up. They're not going to get better anytime soon, but fuel supply, which is the current stress, right? That is the biggest problem, will be resolved. And I say that.
Whether it's sooner or later.
I say that as, this is the Luke and James political party on how we would run things. We would solve this. But let's assume there's someone with half a ticker up in Canberra who's figuring this one out. And, I'm going to hope that there is.
James Ward, always good to talk to you. I know you're out of time. I wanted to talk to you. I went to AI for fun the other day.
Oh, yes. I've been doing this for, we've AI's got so many problems, but I tell you what, if you want to have fun with it, that's where it works. So it's a cool toy. It's not a great business tool at the moment.
All right. So we're going to look at this next time we talk in a couple of weeks. I asked, what are the 10 worst cars ever released in Australia? And I based the question on historical reliability, safety features, and sales performance.
Yep.
Okay. And the top 10, well, I'll tell you what, number 1 was the Leyland P76, which was released between 73 and 75. Now, whether that's true or not, I all I did was ask AI. But I'll go through the other 9 with you next time, and you might want to add to the list. I'll send you what AI gave me. I think I have. I think you've got the email.
Right.
And then I'll get yours. And let's ask our listeners, between now and next time James Ward and I chat, what is the worst car you've ever owned and why?
So
okay?
I'm going to preempt this by someone's going to ring and say they had a Lada that was a bucket of crap. Now, I've owned 6 Lada Nivas. I love them. What I've been playing with AI is asking it to make cars into Hot Wheels cars. So that is a Lada Niva Hot Wheels. How
Oh,
cool is
look
that?
at
That it's been
that.
built by AI. But I got it to do, and I don't know how cool this is. This is just, I got it to make my Peugeot
Yeah.
as a Hot Wheels car.
Yeah.
Check it out. Like it
Just
does
hold
the
that.
packet and everything. And then I said, make it a race car model though. And it did this. And it is like, it's a cool toy. There's no commercial value in this. Oh, you can see, what have I got? I got a meeting coming up is what that's telling me. That is a Hot Wheels car that it has created of a Peugeot 308 station wagon. So, you know, I'm sure that costs fuel and RAM and energy to burn through computers, supercomputers, figuring that out to have me have a chuckle. But yeah, all right, the worst cars ever in Australia, because I know what some of them are going to be, but I'm very keen to hear.
Let's ask our listeners, what is the worst car you've ever owned and what happened? Why? And we'll see what we come up with. James Ward, drive.com.au. When can we see you on the telly?
Quite a lot at the moment. I'm on the news a bit. I'm on Today Show every Sunday morning. So if you're eating your Wheat Bix and you want to learn about what's happening in the world, Sunday morning, usually around 9 o'clock, I'm on the Weekend Today Show. We've got more seasons of Drive TV coming up. I think I'm in a couple of them. We've got some stuff for end of financial year. I'll be in that. So, you know, I'm kind of everywhere, but I'll be on the news. I think I was on the news last night when we filmed this. But yeah, Sunday mornings you can see me. And if anyone listening has got a question, you can send it through to us. Ask Drive at drive.com.au and we'll get back to you. So we're here to help with anything. If you just need some advice or you got a problem, come to us. We'll help you out.
I love your work, mate. Thanks very much. We'll talk soon. James Ward.
Thanks, mate. Talk soon.
But you legends stick around. Luke's chilly meltdowns and his bulletproof head sound. Rod's yelling about green reflectors. Bill's digging.
Well, the 2026 Oscars have come and they've gone. My God, it takes a long time to get through all of this. Unbelievable, isn't it, folks? But there it is. And it looks as though the big winner was one battle after another. It completely dominated the night. 6 wins, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor. And I haven't seen it. And I hadn't heard much about it. I am so out of the loop, even with our guru, Shane Adam-Basset, trying to educate me every fortnight. He's back on the line. Were you on the red carpet? Were you there?
You know, the funny thing is I can go in, there's a ballot for media and you can go in as foreign media, and I've been invited before. I do have a fear of flying, so I've never actually gone. I've only ever gone overseas twice in my entire life. One day I'm going to get to the Cannes Film Festival and the Academy Awards to cover it. So I wasn't there, but the 98th Annual Academy Awards was massive. I mean, in 2 years' time, it's turning 100. That's how long the Oscars have been around for.
Just before we do a deep dive into the winners, the losers, and the goodie bags, when you get the media invite, is it for one person or two?
Well, I haven't had a media invite because you go into a ballot, you apply. But because I've been a journalist for so long covering entertainment, you know, internationally, I kind of automatically qualify. So I don't know how many tickets had to be. It'd probably be 2, but I couldn't imagine that they'd give you 2 if you didn't apply for 2, because they have like a tier upstairs at the Oscars, and that's family and friends and media. They have their own media room as well. Not sure exactly how it works. And a friend went once and she told me that at the end, and I don't know if this still happens, they cut some of the red carpet up and give you a piece of it, like a square of it, and give it to you, like to keep. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like I collect things.
That is really, really cool. Now, listen, if you have a fear of flying, our Kelsey will accept and go on your behalf and cover it, okay? Yes. We'll send Kelsey to the Oscars next year if you can't go, okay?
Well, I'm aiming for the 100th. It was in the 98th this year, so I'll see how I go. It depends on my my work, my employers as well, what they want me to do and where I'll be next year or the year after. But I'll remember that for Kels. Maybe she could come and be my my camera person. That'd be good too.
She would do anything. Okay, now let's get into this. One battle after another, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. I know nothing about it. Did it deserve to win? Take us through it. Well, we'll go through all the major winners, but we'll start with Best Picture.
That's funny. I reckon I must have spoken about it over and over again. So it's a movie that got 13 nominations, totally deserved them all. Now, it was up against Sinners, which also had 16 nominations, but One Battle After Another to me was my pick. I said the months leading up to it, it was going to clean up. It was tough though to decide who was going to win out of Sinners and One Battle After Another, because Sinners had the momentum. But One Battle After Another is a story about a father and daughter getting separated. Leonardo DiCaprio, in particular, is amazing in it. He didn't win Best Actor, but he was nominated. And it's a 2.5 hour story about politics, about America, how it is at the moment, about a father and daughter. And then you've got Sean Penn's character, who also won. He is part of this sort of evil resistance that will do anything to disrupt, is it probably a good word, disrupt people's life. And he has a mission. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's a strange movie and it's a loud movie. And it's definitely not for everyone, but to me, it deserved Best Picture. I really, really enjoyed it. It's just over 2.5 hours long, so you've got to be prepared for that. But to me, it didn't seem like it. It went pretty fast.
Well, I'll tell you, how long did the Oscars last? God,
they started at 10. Well, they started an hour early this year, so Sydney time, 10 a.m., and they finished up about 1:30, 1:40, 1:45. So still under 4 hours.
4 hours. Okay.
Oh, no, I love it, Luke. I love it. Did you? I'm not sure you didn't see it, but there was a great tribute to the In Memoriam. Before we continue, I wanted to mention, because I know you'd appreciate this. The In Memoriam was very hard to watch and sad this year. They started off with a Rob Reiner tribute. So Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal and a lot of cast members from previous Rob Reiner movies all walked out in a line together. After a whole lot of other things happening in this memoriam, which, included so many people that we've lost this year, not just actors, but people behind the scenes as well. Robert Redford, Barbra Streisand came out and had a chat about him.
I saw her singing a little bit of The Way We Were.
Yeah, so she finished off and told a quick story about him on stage. But since then, I don't know if you heard this, Jane Fonda has come out and said, well, why didn't they ask me? Because I starred in 4 movies or something with Robert, and Barbara only starred in 1. So I think maybe Jane has a point, but she was also I'm a bit surprised she wasn't there as well. That's true.
Yeah, but when these things come and they go, you shut up. You just shut up.
You shouldn't have said anything. No.
I wouldn't have said anything. But anyway, maybe she does have a point. We mentioned One Battle After Another, so Best Director Paul Thomas Anderson. Michael B. Jordan, and here's that other movie you were talking about, Sinners, Best Actor. I hadn't heard of Michael B. Jordan before. I thought he played basketball.
Probably why the actor has the B in his name, so he doesn't get mixed up. Like Michael J. Fox did that. There was another Michael Fox acting around the same time, and he went, oh, okay, I better do Michael J. Fox. That's how that came about. Michael B. Jordan had momentum going into this. I said all along that maybe Timothée Chalamet or Leonardo DiCaprio. Timothée Chalamet was up for Best Actor in that ping pong movie, the table tennis movie, Marty Supreme. Which I didn't like. He was the favourite for a long time, but Michael B. Jordan won a couple leading up to it, or he was nominated for more and got more attention as well. He plays 2 roles in Sinners, and Sinners is essentially set in an era where African Americans were not accepted as like they are now, and there's twin brothers who set up this club in the middle of nowhere, but it's in a place where the Klan are about, Ku Klux Klan, and then vampires. I'm not going to just spoil it here, but halfway through the movie, when you think, this is just turning into a drama or whatever, vampires turn up. So it turns into a horror movie and a movie of survival. But the special effects, and it's all about music too. It's like a history of blues music in it.
Right.
So people love the soundtrack as well. A lot of original songs. The cinematography is really good. So it had all the elements of another Best Picture. So it was close to winning over the top of One Battle After Another. But Michael B. Jordan, he deserves it. Look him up. Luke, he's been around for a while. He was also in Creed, the Creed movies. He was, Apollo Creed's son in those movies.
I saw it on an aeroplane, yes.
Yeah, that's who he is. Yeah, he deserves that. I think he's a great actor. He's actually his next movie, I think, is Miami Vice. They're doing Miami Vice with the guy who played Elvis,
really?
Austin Butler. Look, I love Miami Vice, the old TV show. It's very retro, and if it's done well as an action movie, it might work.
Lots of open neck cream shirts and pastel pants.
And no socks. Shoes with no socks.
Sand shoes with no socks. Exactly. Moving through it. Best actress, Jessie Buckley from Hamnet.
Jessie Buckley beat Australia's Rose Byrne, which is, we can talk about that later if you like. None of the Australians won, sadly. However, Jessie Buckley played Shakespeare's wife in Hamnet, and it's a story about William Shakespeare's wife and child, and tragedy. And it was his inspiration to write Hamlet. So that's what that movie is about. Certainly not for everyone. Certainly a slow drama, British drama, but brilliant. And also Jessie Buckley pulls your heart out. She is so emotional and devastating. The tragedy and the grief that she goes through and the acting that she portrays in this movie, she was always going to win. She lost nothing. She had a clean sweep out of all the award ceremonies that went way back from the Golden Globes in January to the Oscars in March. She won everything. So that was no surprise. She was a very short price favourite and deserves it. But Rose Byrne was in the same category, and Rose Byrne was very good in her movie. She would have won it probably any other year, but Jessie Buckley is just crazy good. Really good.
She did get on stage with the Bridesmaids reunion, which I thought was interesting.
That was good. Yeah. That was a very funny reunion. 15 years, I think.
15,
they said.
My God. And there's talk that there'll be a Bridesmaids 2. Do you think it'll happen?
Look, everything seems to be coming back, right? So, yes, if they can get them all on stage together, which probably is pretty rare when it comes to so many actors, they can maybe negotiate something for a movie down the track. I think there'd be another Bridesmaids, but where do you go? Is it called something else? Divorce, maybe?
Anyway, we'll keep an eye out for that. Now, we'll just quickly get through it. Best supporting actor, you mentioned this, Sean Penn.
Yeah, I love Sean Penn. It was his third Oscar. He didn't go. He didn't turn up. I think he was on a humanitarian charity mission or something. Give it to him for that, because he's been doing that his entire life. A lot of humanitarian work. He was unreal. Like Jacob Elordi, the Australian, he was in this category for Frankenstein. Didn't win, obviously. Sean Penn was amazing. He's so evil and vile in one battle after another. Some of the things that he does and says, and his look, he has this weird walk. He has hair, like weird hairstyle that he puts over his forehead. Amazing performance. And Sean Penn's one of our modern great actors, whether you like him or not. He's one of our modern greats.
I'm neither here nor there. He was married to Madonna, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah.
He was for a while.
Yeah.
So the star of Shanghai Surprise has 3 Oscars.
Supporting actress Amy Madigan for Weapons. Tell me about this.
Weapons was in my top 10 movies. It was actually my top 3 movies for 2025. Saw it 3 times. Amy Madigan plays a witch. Essentially, she's a witch. She puts a curse on a group of children. I've spoken about this before, and I don't want to spoil it because it is such a great film, but Weapons is about a group of missing children in this town, and the parents don't know where they are, and they're all from this one school group, this one school class, except one kid. He didn't go missing. So the teacher's blamed, people are blamed, but no one knows where the kids are. It turns out that there's like this hex on them, and they're being taken, they've been hidden, and yeah, the parents go about their business and look for them. But it's told in 5 different stories, so 5 different angles from different characters. Great film, intense. And Amy Madigan, who's married to Ed Harris, and they've been together for such a long time, the great Ed Harris, and she's been in movies forever. I remember in the 80s watching, I've got movies on DVD from the 80s and the 90s that she was in. So, yeah, Amy Madigan, totally. She plays a character called Aunt Gladys. She's incredible. So I'm really glad that she won.
I had to go up to the chemist while this shebang was going on, and one of the categories that was being announced on the little TV while I was waiting at the pharmacy.
Really?
Yeah, I was there for 10 minutes waiting for a script, and it was an Oscar for best casting. Are you serious? Are you serious? Are we giving out Oscars for casting?
I'll answer that because it's a new category. But
God, it's like breakdancing at the bloody Olympics.
That's a really good comparison, actually. I'm surprised that the chemist you went to had the TV and the Oscars on. I think that's great. I love that. I love to hear those stories.
I had no
Anyway.
choice. I mean, they got a telly in the corner, and that was on. I was in no mood because I was getting painkillers for a tooth that I had. But anyway, so keep going. Casting gets an Oscar.
Yeah, this is the first time it's like an ensemble award, and it's
Let's have a casting for a key grip.
It's an ensemble of the best casting for a group of people in a movie, and all the nominees had some very good actors, but it's sort of like celebrating the casting director, and the casting director is the one who pulls from all the talent and makes the cast. So I kind of get it. The Golden Globes have introduced a box office achievement award, which is almost like a popularity award. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe the casting in the Oscars is along those lines, a popularity award, a collective. Yeah. I don't mind it. Next year they're introducing another award for stunts, which is a little bit more something that I've been.
I can get that. And will they introduce the lowest ticket sold? Because Melania Trump will clean up next time.
There was a few jokes about that. Jimmy Kimmel, if you want to look it up, did a very, very fun. He was introducing the documentary winners, right? So he had a very good joke about the Melania documentary.
As you know, there are some countries whose leaders don't support free speech. I'm not at liberty to say which. Let's just leave it at North Korea and CBS. Fortunately, for all of us, there is an international community of filmmakers dedicated to telling the truth, oftentimes at great risk, to make films that teach us, that call out injustice, that inspire us to take action. And there are also documentaries where you walk around the White House trying on shoes.
Okay, Conan O'Brien, the host. How did he go?
Not quite as spectacular as last year. It was a somber start because he did a little bit of a monologue about the issues of things that are happening in the world at the moment. They addressed that and right off the bat, and I think that was pretty cool. I think that the way he worded it, and I'm not into politics. I don't know much about current affairs. That's me, that's me. But he did a very good job there. So overall, though, his skits were hit and miss. He did quite a lot of skits that weren't on stage. They were pre-filmed, so you just saw them. They were pretty good, but they were a bit hit and miss. What happened was it was a pretty weird production because a lot of the times, you know how when someone's winning something, Luke, and then the music will come up if they've gone too long?
Yeah, the playoff. It's called the playoff.
Well, instead of playing them off, which started to happen quite a lot, even from the early time when it first started, the ceremony, the microphone started going down on a couple of people. So they were talking, and then the microphone came, and you could see Conan O'Brien sort of standing there in the corner. The camera went on him because he's supposed to say something next, but he waited, and then the microphones would come back up. It was quite funny. So, look, he was funny. I liked him. I thought he made a bigger impression last year, but he was still terrific. Conan O'Brien is the man.
I was surprised to hear how little the host gets paid. I thought they'd get paid a squillion. And then you think about the Super Bowl halftime entertainment, they get paid nothing. And the argument is you have such a huge audience, and people are lining up to do it for free. It's revealed that Conan only got paid $15,000, but once again they say it's a huge stage for you to shine, and you should be grateful that you're asked. Were you surprised at only $15,000?
Very much, yeah. I've never known anything about that. You've sent me and showed me that article, which really enlightened me. I am surprised. You don't just turn up the day before and do it. It is months and months of rehearsals and this and that. Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, do the seat fillers get paid a lot? And do the other presenters that come out and the singers and dancers that all to get together and do
you think so? You think they would have to get paid something? I don't know about the seat fillers, but apparently there was a little box of goodies under the seat for every member in the audience, and it was a Conan O'Brien cinema pack. And it had sweets and a drink and some skinny popcorn, whatever that is. So there was a little box of goodies, but for everyone nominated and then for every winner, there's a massive goodie bag, isn't there?
Yeah, I can't tell you how much it is, but it gets bigger every year. You might be able to tell me how much maybe it is because someone on radio leading up to it.
I did some research for you. The bag is worth about $346,000 worth of goodies. It's the Luxe present. It's the best gift bag so far. I've got a list of things here. There's accommodation, there's holidays, there's spa treatments.
Yeah.
There's everything you'd possibly want. The total value, $346,000 worth of goodies in the gift bag. It's not a bad show bag you'd pick up at the Easter show, isn't it? There's a trip to the Maldives, $23,000.
Yeah.
A $5,500 stay at a Barcelona hotel. Ancestry DNA's $25,000 VIP family history experience. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Well, see, it's free exposure for those products or those places that put things into those goodie bags because that's why it's grown over the years. So social media has grown over the years. That trip overseas, you know what? That's probably it's a free trip for the celebrity, but they're also going to be posting from that location and giving it publicity.
The Logies goodies bag. Are you ready?
The Logie. Yes.
Okay, now the Logies goodie bag, which is officially known as the Celebrity in Hollywood gift bag, has a mix of luxury items. Its value, it ranges from $1,400 to $4,500. Travel and accommodation packs, beauty and skincare, tech accessories, lifestyle and specialty items, and different services, vouchers for spa treatments, gym sessions, or premium food experiences. So there you are, a little bit different.
A little bit different, but this will bring up and I've always said this, and people will probably say it about the Oscars and award shows in general. Maybe it's a little bit irrelevant, I think. Are the Logies irrelevant? Are the awards irrelevant? And are those gift bags irrelevant? They're just giving rich people more things most of the time. You know, sometimes you get an actor who's never been nominated before, has just started, and they get a nomination, and then the spotlight's on them. That's great that they get it because they're not from that background. They haven't had money in the past, but then there's celebrities who were born into money, or there's actors who keep getting nominated and they worked hard for that. I get it, but they just keep getting the goodie bags. So, yeah, some people are very lucky.
And when you win an Oscar, Best Actor, Actress, Support, whatever, Best Movie, does that reflect in post-Oscar ticket sales?
It can. They've actually just re-released One Battle After Another. I actually don't think anyone's going to go, but it does. It can. It used to. It used to before streaming.
How long until that's on streaming, do you reckon?
Oh, it's been on streaming for about 3 months already.
Well, okay. When I go downstairs tonight, that's what I'll watch. I'll find it.
It's on HBO Max. The winners were almost all Warner Brothers movies. Sinners is Warner Brothers. One Battle After Another is Warner Brothers. One Battle After Another was on mid-year last year in cinemas, did very well, and then it went to streaming late last year, and then now I've noticed my local cinema and other cinemas around have One Battle After Another back in the cinema if you want to watch it on the big screen.
All right. Now, Shane Adam-Basset. So something that's new in the cinema that you can actually see this weekend is Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary, what's it about?
It's about going into space and helping Earth survive, but it is a comedy. It is a space exploration science movie, but
Right.
it is easy to understand, and it's a crowd pleaser. It's a little bit like Castaway in space, except someone is in space on their own, and instead of Wilson the volleyball, there's a little alien like E.T. with him that has his own language. It's written by the same guy that did The Martian. Remember that movie? Well, you might not maybe have seen it, Luke, but Matt Damon is on Mars with a group, and he gets stuck there, and he has to survive on his own. That was a huge hit and a very entertaining, cool movie.
I did see that. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you'll like this too. It's the same person, same vibe, except instead of on Mars, he's trying to survive. He's in space trying to survive, and he's going somewhere. He's got a destination, and he's a science teacher. He's a school teacher. He's a professor. He's not an astronaut. So that's, he gets recruited, and I don't want to give everything away, but that's how he ends up in space. Played by Ryan Gosling. Amazing movie. The cinematography, looking around the big screen at the cinema, you're in space. Try and watch it on a really big screen. But Project Hail Mary is definitely a 4 tops out of 5, 4 stars out of 5. It's an amazing film, so I recommend it.
All right, Shane, thank you so much. Just remember, Kelsey will go to the Oscars next year if you can't go, okay? Put a name down.
We'll have to talk about it. Yes, definitely. Even the Cannes Film Festival, I'll think about taking Kelsey to. I want to be camera person.
Take Kelsey. She will hold microphones, cameras. She will do anything. Please keep her in mind. Hey, listen, you take care. Talk to you in a fortnight.
Thanks for having me, Luke. Bye, everyone.
Just a dirty truckie putting food on my table. Got a fat kid who is lazy and an asshole. Just a truckie boy, you made. I put food on your woolly shelf. You may let's be safe and look after yourself. I appreciate a little room, and when they moved over, thank you for your patience. Thank you forever. We are enemies, we don't gotta be. But you and me make our place to be. You will be a little late. Clock at the side out fate. Not today, not tonight. We will keep it steady and straight. Watch my lane in the mains.
Time for another Truckie Tuesday with Rocket Rod Hannafy, the king of the Kenworth, who has just returned from a trip to Perth and back. He's at Port Pirie at the moment. So, Rocket Rod, what's going on?
Mate, everything went reasonably well on the trip. Straight over, up to Kalgoorlie, split trailers, do a delivery. There was no AdBlue at Norseman. That was a bit of a worry, but they had some at Kalgoorlie. Into Perth, it was bloody hot. Unloaded one trailer, had thought I was going to be delayed, but managed to ring up and get one trailer unloaded and reloaded. Went back to the truck stop at New Chia, which is coming down the Tonkin Highway into Perth, and went back, stayed there the night, had a shower, went back the next morning, unloaded the second one and reloaded, left Perth, and I got to Port Pirie yesterday afternoon, and I'm here until Monday morning.
Wow. So what route did you take? And don't you dare say Mrs. Hannafy. So what, do you go across the Nullarbor or not?
Yeah. Yep, so from Dubbo through Broken Hill, rang Fergo. I hadn't met his dad. I'd only talked to him once on the UHF. Yeah. He'd passed me on the road. So I rang Fergo. They came out and said g'day. Yeah. We had to do a little bit of load adjustment there. Had a chain that we needed to move. Had another driver with me, one of our drivers. We travelled together on the way over until we got there. And, yeah, virtually from there to Port Augusta. We made Port Augusta nearly the first night. In our logbook, we have a thing called long and night hours. So if you do a long hour, which is anything over 12 in a day, it actually costs you an hour and a half out of your total. And if you do a night hour, which is anything from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., that also costs you another half an hour. So they add up against you. So we tried to stop by one, so we didn't sort of waste that too much. Second night, we made it to the top of Majura Pass. So when you go across from Port Augusta, you go across to Eucla, which is sort of the top of the bight, and then you drop down onto the plain, and you go right across there through Nullarbor, the Nullarbor Plain, Kaiguna, Balladonia, and then you come up the other end of the pass, and you actually drive up and sit on top of the plateau again, and that's the Majura Pass, where the Majura Roadhouse is. So made it there the second night, and then the third night we got to Merredin, which I think is the place where they have earthquakes in WA, and then we turned off at Merredin and went a slightly different route out the back. If you go in straight through off the Great Western Highway, you've got to split trailers at Northern. So they did allow many years ago when the rail was closed. They did allow road trains to run all the way into Perth, but you had to do it under escort. And last time I was there, I was in the last group of escorted trucks. You had to have a flashing light on the back of your truck. I think there was about 10 of us ran together, and one bloke in his flash new truck had a problem with his lights on the trailers. And normally we've got the little Utilux pins, but these have little pins on one hole, and when you use them a lot, sometimes the pins come too close together and you've got to spread them apart with a screwdriver. So we tried all that, couldn't get them to work. The bloke said, well, we either leave him behind and he doesn't make it, or you sit him in the middle and there's 3 trucks either side, and we'll get going. So they were really good that way. But then once we got there, that was the end of the escorts, and I had to find a way out. So, yes, found an alternate route. And I did have a mate ring me and say that the BP at Narrabri was $2.97 or something. So the road was very quiet at times, and that was one of the reasons I went to Muchia. There is a big truck stop at Kewdale, but at times it was quiet. Like I think I drove at one stage last night for well over an hour after I left Border Village, and never saw a vehicle. I needed to stop for a toilet break, so I just parked up on the side of the road, stood in the middle of the road, looked at the stars. I got a beautiful sunrise photo the other side of Norseman when I got up there on the way home. And other than an incident with a pilot yesterday...
Yeah, what happened?
It was a good trip. So there was a very wide load. He's travelling the same direction in front of me. He's travelling eastbound. I came up behind them. I'm listening to the pilots talk. So there's a pilot way out in front and a pilot behind the load. As we've caught up, there was a motorhome who'd sat behind me for ages and ages and just wouldn't overtake. Mm-hmm. He's now sitting behind the wide load. There's another car, and then I'm coming up behind. So the lady in the front pilot calls up to the back pilot and says, "How many people have you got there?"
Yeah.
She said, "I can't see." I said, "Righto, there's a camper van, 2 cars, and a big one coming up behind you." And that's just big one's a truck. "Yep, all good, mate." So they said, we'll call you when it's safe. I said, "Righto." So I've just about caught up. She says, "Righto, mate, you and the big one." She said, "Put your nose out and maybe the others will go," because she tried to flash the camper van and he wouldn't go. So, when they're sitting there, they can't talk to them. They don't all have radios. And she's obviously put the indicator on to say go, and they've just sat there and watched her do it. So she said, "Righto, put your nose out and maybe they'll go." So I'm out there beside them, and she called out and about. Now, that means that there is a truck being sent out to overtake. So, of course, I'm fully loaded. I'm at about 85 tonne. I'm right up on my weight this time coming home. And it took me a little while to catch up. And just as I've caught up to the back of the load, we've come up over this bit of a crest, and there's trucks coming the other way. So they, of course, abused me. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, mate. They called me, and I'm operating under the pilot. That's what we do." So anyway, I just ducked back in behind the load and took off, and nothing more was said. And I don't know, because at one stage I did call the pilot and I said, "No one else is going." So I want her to know what's going on and what's happening, and whether the front pilot called at the same time. Now, that's where a lot of pilots, Luke, use 2 radios. They'll have one radio on Channel 40 to talk to the trucks that they're dealing with, and they'll have another radio to talk either to the load itself or the other pilot, so that you don't have that overlap problem that they're both talking at the same time and you don't hear what either of them said. So, look, I just pulled back in. Blake said, "Right, come on round there, mate." "Okay, all good." And it was done, and nothing else was said. Look, it wasn't dangerous. Let's hope that that no one else has the same problem. Maybe they think of having 2 radios.
If you're a vehicle that spends a bit of time on the road, like a camper van, a caravan, get yourself a UHF so that you can listen in and be educated and helped.
It's $400 roughly for a set, plus, getting it fitted. It might cost you $600. But if it saves your life, Luke, if you break down in the middle of the Nullarbor and you're on the side of the road, you can get on the radio and say, "Any westbound trucks, I'm broken down, I need this, or I need a tow, or I need to get parts." It could save your life.
Rod, some news to hand today, and this comes out of the Sunday Mail, and it's a worry. It's getting Mad Max-ish out there. According to the Sunday Mail, Queensland truck drivers are being told to be on alert and put locks on their tanks after reports that criminals are stealing fuel within 5 minutes. Tankers being drained of their fuel and trucks being siphoned while the truck driver's asleep at a rest stop. Your reflection on this?
Well, mate, on the good side, I did see a news report that I stopped somewhere last night saying that WA is allowing a weight increase on their tankers and hay carriers as a short-term thing. Obviously, if they're running out of Perth to somewhere in the middle of Western Australia, every, an extra 10 tonne is going to be an extra 10,000 litres or more if the vehicle has the capacity to deliver the fuel. So they've got the fuel there. But yes, I must admit, I seriously considered where I parked with that in mind. Wow. If you put lock tanks on, then you're only going to smash them, I suppose. At least they're going to make a noise and wake you up. But then what happens if you get out and there's 4 blokes there with,
crowbars,
baseball bats or whatever the case may be? So, look, it's a very concerning issue. The fact that people are prepared to do that is one, and probably some of them are truck drivers, which I really hate to say. I hope that's not the case.
Why do you say that?
Well, because they're in the same boat, mate. Like some of them are going to be in trouble. We're coming up to the end of the month. A lot of people operate their fuel on a monthly account. Now, if you don't invoice it till the end of the month, you might not be getting paid till the middle of the following month, so it could be a month away, and you're carrying that cost.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, we have asked, and in that closing the loopholes legislation, one of the first bills to go through is a minimum 14-day payment. Because if we say to the fuel company at the end of the month, oh, yeah, mate, I'll pay you in a month or so, they'll say, don't bother, mate, you won't be getting any more fuel until you pay for this lot. But our customers expect us to bill, 30 days from the end of the month, and we might pay you then if you're lucky. And, of course, some people don't get paid, mate, and then they're carrying that, they lose the whole amount. So it's one-sided for the customer unless you have 10-day payment, whatever it might be in your contract. But if you've got a fuel card and you have an arrangement with the fuel company, you've generally got a limit. Might be litres, it might be money. Now, up until now, everybody's known what the cost of fuel is. It's been a relatively calm thing for a little while. And your fuel account, you're not going to carry twice what you need, and they're not going to give it to you just in case. But blokes now coming up towards the end of the month are going to run into their credit limit or their fuel limit because they've spent more money on the fuel than they have done for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, the fuel company's not going to say, we understand, we'll give you an extension.
Yeah.
They're going to say, if you don't pay for the fuel, you don't get any more.
Yeah.
And what happens if you're in the middle of the nullable?
I hear you. I worked at a radio station a number of years ago. When you're a salesperson, the majority of your wage is your commission, you can't get a loan on that. You get a loan if you're after a housing loan or a car loan or a personal loan.
On your base wage, yeah.
They give it to you based on your wage, not your commission. And some people were late payers. It is really hard to pay somebody, and you actually haven't been paid.
Can you go into the supermarket, Luke, and say, I'll pay you at the end of the month?
No.
Of course you can't. It's always been an imbalance. We're asking that become a 14-day maximum for payment so that we're not carrying all of that cost. So we hope that will alleviate some of that, but it's not going to stop the current problem with the fuel price. But look, I've got to say the roads are good. I only got pushed off the road once. I was talking to another bloke, and he said Mundrabilla was actually underwater last week when he was across there. There was certainly a lot of water sitting in places, and you could see where someone had moved a wheel off. Virtually the first metre is okay, but there was a couple of places where someone's moved off more than a metre. Now, whether they were forced, whether they decided to pull up for a minute and didn't recognise how bad the road was, but there were some gouges there with it bloody half a metre deep into the road. So, if that had happened when you were fully loaded and travelling at highway speed, they'd have been laying on their side. And a couple of people, I'd say, got a very big fright when they moved off the road and it's just started to sink under them. So, whilst the shoulders there are generally solid and you can drop a wheel onto the shoulder with some safety.
Yeah.
So the bloke behind me, one idiot did up his lights too early and blind him. But most of the blokes that run over there all the time know what they're doing. The problem is when the rail's down, then all of a sudden there's an imbalance in freight.
There's a video I found, and I think the documentary was The World's Most Dangerous Roads. And there was this one road where there's only room for one car, let alone a truck. And it's in India going up into the Himalayas. And there is literally 3 inches between the left tyre and a 300,000-foot cliff. and there's nowhere to turn around or pull over if a truck's coming in the opposite direction. It is, honestly, it gave me sweaty palms watching this thing. Have you seen it?
Mate, I have seen some of those in the past.
Right.
Yes, they're pretty hairy where they move over and they've got inches to spare. But again, they're all slow. They do tend to work through it.
There was one truck that ran out of brakes.
Yes.
And he got in trouble because he was riding them too heavy. He was a truckie, but he just wasn't used to the shit truck. And he ran out of brakes. The brakes got hot. And they're paid nothing.
Yes. We are better off than some, and we are worse off than others. And yet, our trucks are bigger. The lifestyle, again, in America, there's a lot more truck stops, and I'm not saying it's perfect over there. Geez, that's getting screwed pretty badly as well. But for someone to do this job, if you were to turn around and say, I've got this fantastic job, you get to see Australia. Well, I'm sitting here outside the Stories from the Road Museum at Port Pirie. Now, the lady who runs it, her name is Liz Martin, and she was the lady very much involved in the starting of the Road Transport Hall of Fame in Alice Springs. Have you ever seen that, Luke?
No, go on.
So because, Australia is the home of the road trains, and yes, there are a couple of other countries that have them, some parts of America, some in South Africa. That's about all I'm aware of. They decided that someone should recognise those pioneers. So they started the Road Transport Hall of Fame in Alice Springs. They have a Wall of Honour where you can nominate. Fred Nurk started this, or he's done that. You can nominate people for the Wall of Fame. And then Kenworth got involved.
Yeah.
One of the showrooms there is the Kenworth Hall of Fame.
I've heard you talk about it, yep.
Now, they build trucks, and on every truck there is a levy. And they put a brand new truck that has never carried a load in its life in the Hall of Fame. And it sits there for perpetuity. And the reason they did that, Jim Hurley, I think, was very much involved from Brown and Hurley. And they said, look, if we find an old truck that started the industry, one, they're all worn out. They've been buggered. They've done 40 years of work. That costs a lot of money to rebuild an old truck. If we were to put a brand new truck out there, leave it there, yes, it's a cost. Yes, it's not, to my knowledge, it's not done many other places, but they put, sometimes it's the first production run, or it might be a trial run truck, and they put it out there and they sit there for people to go and see, and in 30 years' time, you'll be able to see brand new Kenworth that's never turned a mile in anger, sitting there looking pristine, and they worked out that it was perhaps cheaper to do that when they were built than try and find them and build them later. So, they're the only manufacturer that does it.
Wow.
Some people would say, who might be a little bit Kenworth biased, that they're the only trucks that are going to last that long anyway. You don't see too many old Volvos or Mercedes, although there's a couple, in display. So there was a problem with the Hall of Fame. They had a bit of an issue with the Northern Territory government about status of being a charity and all that sort of thing. Liz left and she's moved down to Port Pirie, and now she's got some lovely old trucks and memorabilia at the Stories from the Road Museum at Port Pirie. Now, there's not a lot of parking here. I've managed to park where I probably shouldn't, and I'm safe and off the road, but I'm going to go and visit there and have a look around during the day and perhaps send you a couple of photos.
Getting back to the national fuel shortage.
And look, I have had somebody ring me and say that there's, talk of a blockade or something like that. I really don't know that that's going to solve it unless the industry agrees. And you can understand why. People are going to lose their livelihoods, lose their houses, and all of that if this doesn't get sorted out fairly quickly.
I got a funny feeling that we may even see some relief in the fuel excise like Morrison did during COVID. Really, is that true that 1/5 of the national truck fleet undergoes engine replacements each year?
I think that's a bit of an oversimplification. Yes, you knew that we had a new block at 700,000, so that was not quite 4 years. And yes, it had a repair, but not a complete engine replacement. Generally, you would like to think you can do 1 million K, and if you do 200,000 years, that's 5 years. But then, a lot of people turn the trucks over at that point because all the diffs have done and all the gearboxes. Then you're starting to look at mechanical failures and major replacements there as well. So, charging your truck battery, which let's say we're saying the size of a pallet, just to make it really simple. People know what a Shep pallet is, or a pallet you put freight on, and let's say it's 1 metre by 1 metre and 1 metre tall. Let's for ease of operation, let's say that's what their battery pack is. Now, that's not going to charge in 5 minutes. You can't leave the truck sit there for 8 hours. Yes, the driver's going to work, but he's only worked 8 hours, so he's going to lose half of his productivity for a start. Yes, if you can replace it. So, mate, there's a long way to go. Now, who's going to pay to have 1 million truck batteries if we can't have batteries that are safe in your e-scooter sitting still in your garage? How are we going to guarantee it on these bloody roads that we'll get back to that bang and crash and move it and wear things out? So, again, easy to say. I think it's a little bit harder to do.
Yeah. In fact, on a smaller scope, but it could have been catastrophic, there was a Virgin airline whose flight had to be delayed. I think they had to make an emergency landing because the battery inside somebody's lithium vape, which was in their stowaway luggage, caught fire.
Jesus. And look at the size of that, the size of your thumbnail.
I know.
Yeah, and we're talking about something the size of a pallet. And the fireys are saying, what happens with a car fire now with an electric battery? They simply can't put it out. I believe in the States they've got a box, they just drop over it and sort of try and, cover it and take the oxygen away. Yeah. But you imagine trying to put that over a truck with a trailer on it.
I know. It's frightening stuff. Look, the technology is hopeful, and wouldn't it be great? But how realistic is it? I really want to try and get the Janus Electric CEO, Ben Hutt, on a Truckie Tuesday, Rod. And when we organise that, you've got to be on with us so that you can ask the right questions, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. The point of the matter is we are in a fuel crisis, and there's no guarantee that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be safe for international shipping anytime soon. So what's going to happen?
Mate, at the moment, as we've discussed, most of our fuel comes from elsewhere. I'd asked people not to panic buy. The servo at Merredin had a sign up, no more jerry cans. We were told at the BP at Mutia that there was a $2,000 limit. That's going to happen more and more. Concerned that people are carting petrol home and doing it under their house. That's a really scary thing. The theft of diesel, for goodness sake, you're stealing it off somebody else who's already under sufferance and already trying to do the right thing by being out on the road. And let's hope the government, with their new role, actually does something instead of talking about doing something for 5 years before they do something that's no good. And look, it doesn't matter what persuasion you are. It doesn't matter whether you're Pauline or Albo or anybody else that's in there. None of them are out in the middle of the Nullarbor looking for fuel. None of them are sitting on a farm, in the middle of Western Australia trying to get a tractor to grow their crops so they don't go broke. Mm-hmm. So they're a long way removed from what's happening, but they have the power to do something about it, and I hope that they truly act decisively and correctly. Now, look, again, you don't want them to turn around and say, hey, Rod, here's $5 million. Quick, build a fuel refining plant tomorrow and I'll go and build it for $1 million and then steal $4 million. We don't want that wasted stuff going on either, but we want someone with half a brain, and I know that's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it, Luke? Getting involved and getting solutions. And one of those things is they've got to talk to us. Now, I've said for 20 years, we as the transport industry get told how to manage our fatigue. We get told where and when to sleep. We get told what to do by all these people that don't have to do it. None of us wants to break the law. None of us wants to have an accident. We want to do the job, get home safe each trip. Now, if they talk to us about this, about how some of these things might work, if they talk to us about the distribution and they talk to the fuel companies, then maybe there are solutions there in the short term that might alleviate some of it. But if they don't talk to us and they turn around and say, you're all going to do this, how well do you think that's going to work, Luke?
We need calm heads. And it's not just fuel tankers and truckies that are having their petrol and fuel stolen. Australian farmers. The farmers are being targeted by thieves.
Their bows is out in the middle of nowhere, yep.
There was a Victorian beef and dairy farmer, and his name is Russell Follett, Follet. And he was left stunned after discovering thieves had drilled a hole into his tractor's fuel tank and drained it completely. Yep. He's from Gembrayag in Nyora. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Someone will jump on me if I haven't. It's southeast of Melbourne.
Yep.
And it all happened while he was feeding cattle. He said, we drove the tractor out of the shed. It went about 20 metres and it cut out. He said, we thought we'd just done a fuel line, but then he had a closer look and realised that there was a drill hole in his tank. The tractor was carrying about 100 litres of diesel. It was all gone. Can you believe it?
Unfortunately, I can, Luke. I don't want to. And I would like to think people are a little bit more reasonable, but that's like expecting I should win the lotto too, Luke, so I'm sure you agree with that. But look, mate, all we can ask is for people to have a bit of common sense and a fair go, respect what's going on and work for a solution instead of making a bigger problem.
Now, Rod, we've got some feedback from Justin, and let me read it. It says, "G'day, legends. Here's another one for Rod Hannafy. This is just some of the locals at
Truganina,
never been there. It's a BP. at Truckanina. He said they rock up, most close the curtains in their cabs and then lock them up and go just in the car. It's getting bloody ridiculous. Only about 4 or 5 actual interstate drivers are here tonight, and this isn't the whole parking area, just a small section. But it's pretty much full of around-town clowns. Keep up the great work. Love listening to you all. Cheers, Justin. Explain to our listeners what the photo is portraying.
So it's a BP truck stop. And what happens is if I've come from Brisbane and I've driven to Melbourne, I either get in early and I need somewhere to park up. You can't just park in the middle of the freeway. So you need somewhere to park up overnight so you can go and unload in the morning, reload and leave. So you need a shower, you need a meal, you need somewhere safe to park. So what happens is people now in the past, would have a local depot for their trucks or whatever. Now they think, I'll just go and park at the BP because there's all this room there and I'll park my truck there and I'll work it during the day. And when he calls them round town clowns, that's what he means. So they work during the day. They park their car in that truck space during the day. And then when they get there of an afternoon, they move their car out of the way, they put the truck in, take their car home, and they get free parking. So they're not paying.
Yeah, right.
And a bloke who comes from Brisbane then can't find a spot in the BP at Truckanina. Now, look, the fuel companies have tried. There's a big BP servo at Cooper Street, and they put security staff on saying that you can't do that, and one of them was assaulted. He was actually threatened and punched in the mouth by someone who disagreed that he had the power to do it. Now, BP own the site. Many of them have signs up that say maximum stay is 8 hours, like our minimum 7-hour break that we have, Luke, in the law. So they do that. Some of them, in the one at WA, it says no WA trailers registered. So on your registration plate, it says WA.
Yeah.
No WA trailers can be dropped because you should have your own yard.
Yeah.
And we are dealing with thousands of trucks that come from the eastern seaboard and they need somewhere to go.
Yeah.
So, look, they're a little bit behind. I've got to say, Luke, since the last time I went over, there are more rest areas. I did put up a couple more green reflectors. I did try and talk to both someone in WA and South Australia without any success as I went through and over and come back. And, of course, I will annoy the shit out of them some more. But they have built a few more in WA. The route that we took up from Merredin, there was one every at least half an hour or so, and I was quite surprised because that's not a very highly trafficked route. So that was really good. Good on them for doing something. But part of that comes back to years ago when I left, I think it was Balladonia one day, and it said next rest area 200 kilometres. And I thought, that's a bit of a worry. And, mate, at one stage I had to pull up and they'd gone and rebuilt the road. Now, they rebuilt the road up and put a 45-degree taper on either side, so you can't even pull safely on the shoulder. And I did complain about that, and it seems maybe some listen. But the last time I went to Darwin, they'd done exactly the same thing. Beautiful road, no shoulder, nowhere to stop, not enough places, no toilets, no facilities. And I'm still asking them to do something better.
Justin, thank you so much for the photo. Now I understand your dilemma, and we hear about it all the time. At Truganina, never heard of it. Population just over 41,000. Well, it's called 42,000.
Yep.
And it's a suburb in Melbourne, Victoria. Truganina. So there you are.
Yes. There's a big jail there and a big DC, and it's sort of become a bit of an industrial area.
Rod, I'll let you go. How long until you're back at Dubbo?
That's a very good question. I'm imagining maybe Wednesday. It just depends on what happens on Monday.
Question. Just thinking back to your 13,000 fuel bill on your trip from Dubbo to Perth, and you're not quite back yet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get in trouble from your boss if you don't shop around for the best price, or can you pull into any servo and just fill up? Are you expected to hunt down a competitive price or not?
Not hunt, be aware. At one stage, mate, last time we went to Darwin, I think there was 20 cents a litre difference between the depot and one of the servos. And we didn't know that till one of our blokes told us because you don't write it down everywhere you go.
No.
We're expected to be aware. And we have 2 separate fuel cards because one place might be out, and as it was, no AdBlue at Norseman, so that's a real letdown. But mate, we're held to account if we're stupid, but it does depend. Like virtually, once you run across the Nullarbor, there's not a lot of choice, mate. So we can't go just anywhere. we have to use the fuel cards that we have, and most trucking companies have fuel cards, and most of them have two, so that if your major supplier is out or you're stuck somewhere, you can generally get fuel, because they don't earn a lot of money sitting on the side of the road.
How many servos along the Nullarbor?
Off the top of my head, let's say 5. From Border Village, there is one at Euclid, but that's not really a truck stop. You've got Nullarbor in the middle. There's Mundrabilla. There is one at Majura, but I don't think you can get a road train in there. You might be able to drop trailers and go in if you're desperate. Then you've got Kaiguna, Balladonia, and then you're sort of at the other end. Maybe 5 or 6. And look, they are pretty isolated. I pulled into Nullarbor Roadhouse on the way across. And, mate, it was about, so again, we have to operate on our time. So I'm still running on New South Wales time, and they're, of course, behind. As I pulled in, a mate actually rang me up and he said, "Oh, that's a wild-looking load," because he saw me drive in and hadn't seen him for a little while. I walked into the bar, because they have bars in some of those truck stops. They're in the middle of nowhere. "Oh, any chance of a meal?" No, we stopped cooking an hour ago. Go next door into the, cafe part. You might get something there. Walked over there. Any food left? No, we threw that away an hour ago. Now, again, trucks run day and night, and I understand that they've got to have staff there. But, on our time, I think it was only about 9 o'clock their time. So the bar stopped cooking at 7:30, and the cafe threw the rest out at 8 o'clock. So had nothing, had to go out and cook something in the truck. Now, again, in a place like that, you would hope that they would be just that little bit more flexible, because I can't go across the road to the cafe because there's not one for 300 kilometres.
Wow.
That was a bit disappointing.
Yeah. You were saying earlier in today's chat that it'd be great to have politicians that understand the needs of regional Australia, and then you mentioned One Nation. One Nation had a massive result in South Australia over the weekend, a landslide for Labor, but One Nation's clear number 2. We're hoping to talk to Barnaby Joyce very, very soon on the Bonafide podcast, and I'll be talking about the plight of regional Australia and the importance of the Australian trucking industry when I talk to Barnaby next, okay?
I think he has some understanding of it, mate. He's a regional man and he knows what trucks do and how important they are. Whether they get the chance to actually do something about it and make change, I suppose that's to be decided by the Australian public at some stage, isn't it, Luke?
Right, you take care of yourself, get home safely, and we'll talk soon.
Safe travelling to all, mate.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 92. Lots of exciting things happening here. We'll do another live stream after we get back from our road trip to Kangaroo Valley, and we'll show you. Kelsey and Nathan are getting married at Kangaroo Valley Golf Resort. The owner is Charles Tarby, and they'll be having a couple of beers. He'll be having a couple of cheeky reds. Kelsey and Nathan will have a look at the joint, and you'll meet Charles's lovely wife, Amy. And I think Nathan's parents are coming, Steve and Lisa. So we'll report. I'll be doing my cross on Channel 7 Sunrise live from Kangaroo Valley this Friday morning at 6:45. So I hope you can join in. Wait till you see all the kangaroos. You'll be amazed. Thank you very much for your time. And
do you not have a thought of the day?
I do. You know what?
Okay.
My dad used to say, always hire a lazy person.
They get the job done quicker.
Because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it.
Hells yeah. I agree.